the go live button.
I am.
We're live.
I'm recording.
Yeah, that's where we'll be. You're listening to the Verhoeven Effect. Oh no! Tell your friends. You're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
And we have another very special episode. We have the 2012 movie Silver Linings Playbook. Nathan, do you have a history with this movie?
No, I watched it for the first time this weekend.
Okay. I have a history with this movie.
Okay.
Because this came out in 2012, so that's when I was in training for the Marine Corps for like half that year. So I just didn't have. So all of pop culture disappeared for like half that year. I saw Dark Knight Rising before I went in, and then somewhere on a vacation in between, I saw Skyfall, and that was all the movies I saw for half that year.
Oh, okay.
And then somewhere around for the Schoolhouse, where I got really depressed and like things were like it just kind of sucked. And there was two movies from 2012 that Patton Oswalt recommended that I ended up getting in 2013. One was Dread, and the other was this movie.
Yeah, both of them make you happy.
Because I really dismissed this movie because I saw the trailers for it. I'm like, I know this movie. It's an Oscar bait movie about somebody with mental illness. They have an episode that they can't recover from, and everyone's sad at the end of the movie. I know what this movie is. Or it's the other way around, where it's like they have mental illness, and at the end of it, they win. And this movie is neither of those things. So that's why I really like it, because I really put it in a corner, and it wasn't that kind of movie. It's somewhere in between.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know, did you ever hear about this movie, or what were your
I knew
expectations
nothing
going?
of- I had no expectations. I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence and Robert De Niro are in this. And it also like won an Academy Award. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this movie. I don't know
Well,
what.
I thought you said something last week. You like said it was going to be like a romantic comedy or something like that.
Yeah, that's like just based on like stuff I read. It's like, okay, well, this is interesting. And then because I didn't read anything about it, because that kind of screws it up for me.
Yeah.
And so I had a really fun like interaction with this movie while watching it, because I was like, oh, mental illness is a central theme in this movie. This is going to be like Fight Club. Like none of this stuff is real, or it's going to be like Shutter Island. In the end, we find out he never left the mental institution. None of these people existed. I was actually expecting that, but then I looked at what this movie cost to make, who was in it, and how much money it made, and I was like, no, there's no way it's that. But I was sure expecting like, oh, Jennifer Lawrence wasn't real and his wife was dead. He killed her. I was actually thinking it was going down this road. It's like, oh, okay. Because usually with mental illness is like a central theme of the movie, or something that affects one or all of the characters, it's like, oh, immediately unreliable narrator. We don't know what's really going on. We've all seen this a dozen times. I mean, everyone's seen Fight Club at least 100 times. If they were 20 in the last 20 years, they've all seen this movie. So it's like, this has got to be it. But then I looked in the amount of money it made, and it's like, no, there's no way it's not this. But
this is a very successful movie for what it was.
Yeah, oh yeah. That's what I mean. It's like this. If it was just dark, and at the end it turned out he was just in a mental institution, that guy from Sling Blade was next to him or something. You're like, oh, that's a really dark ending. It's like it wasn't true.
But it's also not a happy ending. It just resolves in like kind of a neutral place, and you're supposed to be happy with that. So that's why like it's also a weird movie, because it's not like it's a happy ending for the characters who are emotionally damaged.
And also it's a happy ending for the characters in the moment it is filmed.
Yeah.
It's like, let's see what happens 5 years later. Because these people's problems didn't go away.
No.
There's still bipolar. I know two people that have that. It's draining and terrifying. It's like awful. He does a good job of acting it, because it's like, yep, that's how those people are. It's like, hey, are we having fun today? Cool. What about tomorrow? No. Okay. Oh, we're going into the not fun place right now. All right. Well, see you later, because I'm not a mental health professional. So.
So yeah, it came out December 25th, 2012. I'm guessing in time for Oscar season, because it did get nominated for a lot. I'm not sure how much it won. Because also, the next year they pretty much the whole cast came back for American Hustle, and then there they won like all the Oscars.
Yeah.
Because this is directed by David O. Russell, who did things like Three Kings, I Heart Huckabees, which is famous for him yelling at an actor.
Remember he like yelled at Lily Tomlin and
Yeah,
called her the C word and stuff, and it got recorded.
Yeah.
Is that when the guy for like Christian Bale's like, "Oh, David, you got to draw it in, man." I don't know if he said that to him, but I know they worked together later.
Yeah, they worked together a bunch. So yeah, he seems to be good enough that like people work with him again and again. So I don't know. He must draw some kind of following. So
I know him and George Clooney like got in a fist fight and they won't work together. But I see that as like, oh, it's just two giant egos like creating some kind of negative universal field where they have to destroy each other or be apart. So I don't know.
Yeah, he did things like was it The Fighter? Like I said, American Hustle. What's his other big ones?
I remember Three Kings as being like kind of a cool movie.
Oh yeah, that was one of those first movies that did that, like reclaiming the silver. I forget what it's called, but it has a very cool look to it that they don't do anymore because now they can just do it digitally. So, yeah, I think his movies are kind of overly serious a lot of times.
Yeah.
So this is a real interesting blend because I read some trivia that said like Sidney Pollack was like coaching him on how to make this movie because he's like, drama and comedy is really hard to put together in a movie. And so he like struggled for years to get this movie made because like it's not working right. And he hit the right, because it's like that's a hard line to toe, and he made it work. Like most of this movie should not have worked at all.
No,
because it could have taken a wrong turn at any moment very quickly.
Well, I mean, yeah, because didn't they have to like renew the rights to it twice just to get the screenplay written?
Probably.
Because I know David O. Russell, like it took him, because the book was published in 2008, and there was like multiple screenplays submitted and thrown out by David O. Russell on this about this with this movie, and it's like, okay.
I'm gonna just a quick look at his other filmography. Where's it at? Come on. Oh, I'm looking at the movie. Never mind. Yeah, now I'm relying on my editing skills. Like, I can leave a gap. Figure it out.
Oh, his filmography?
Yeah, his directing. Yeah, Three Kings, I Huckabee, The Fighter.
Spanking the Monkey?
That was his first movie.
Okay.
His latest movies have not been great. There's a movie he did with Jennifer Lawrence called Joy, which I remember people not liking. And then he did something called Amsterdam, which looks like it has a good cast, but I never saw it, so I didn't even saw advertisement for that. But although his upcoming
Has that got the protagonist in it?
What's that?
Has that got the protagonist in it?
What's that?
What's his name's son? The guy who was in Tenet.
Oh yes, John David Washington.
I always think of him as the protagonist now.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't know why, because I actually think he's a good actor, but it's like such a weird movie. It's just a weird name for a character.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like
Denzel Washington's son is who it is.
Yeah. Well, what's his technical name in the Fight Club? What's his? Isn't it Jack or something? Because he says I am Jack's something. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, like Jack's lack of ego, or it's always some. Yeah.
But yeah, this Amsterdam movie, the cast is Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, and John David Washington. So let's see what's the average rating it's got here. 6.1, so it's probably fine.
Yeah. Never seen it.
No, I don't even know what it is.
No reason I wouldn't, but I've never seen Joy either. Last thing I saw was American Hustle that he did. So
yeah. And that might be where he like kind of let things go because he got all those awards. Because here's what's predicted on the docket for him to do. One's called Super Toys, which is apparently a movie about a couple selling toys in the 70s.
Okay.
And then the other one is Madden, like a movie about John Madden, but not just John Madden. It's about him getting fired from the Oakland Raiders and then going on to like lend his name to a video game, and it's about the development of the Madden video game.
Okay, interesting.
which I'm guessing that's just on the docket because everyone's like, oh, Barbie made like $2 billion. Let's just start
Yeah.
licensing all these toy lines and video game stuff, and then like making movies about it.
Someone had a humorous thing about why people like Barbie. It's like, oh, it's because people now have the insight to understand that we are all controlled by evil corporations and just their products, or some weird abstract thing like that. And it's like, I wish that's why people like it.
I hear good things. It seems like it's a funny, sarcastic movie that has like I don't know, like upbeat stuff to it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the people involved in it, it's like, well, this is obviously there's more depth to this than what there seems to be.
Well, yeah, and I heard there's like almost like a Fight Club like thing with the Ken character.
Yeah.
Where you have to watch it like the movie 2 different times to get 2 different meanings out of it. Because one time's like, oh, he's just an idiot or whatever, but then there's this other thing is like, no, he's like the female version of when they put like a damsel of distress in other movies where like they're just there to not have any agency and stuff like that, but this is the male version of non-agency characters. um Which seems like something that Ryan Gosling would do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the character that has the least valuable lines. And I'm just there. And then left to the audience's interpretation.
I'm going to stare at the camera a lot.
The cinematographer is... Oh, how am I going to say his name? Masanobu Takayanagi. No, it's Takayanagi. Yeah, Takayanagi.
Yeah, Takayanagi. Yeah, usually those Japanese names flow pretty well. I guess he's Japanese. Hold on, let me look that up. That sounds Japanese. Yes, he's Japanese. Thank God.
Okay. Is he from Japan or is he just of Japanese heritage? Do we know that?
Japanese cinematographer. So yes, he was born in Tomioka, Japan, in the Gunma Prefecture.
Ah, yes, I love the prefecture.
It sounds like he's like in the fighting robot zone.
Let's see here. What else did he do that I recognize? He worked with the Warriors. So that was another David Russell movie. He did The Gray, which I think we might be doing next.
Okay, that's an upbeat movie.
Out of the Furnace. That's another Christian Bale heavy drama that I know. I've never seen it, but he did True Story.
Bank robbery. Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
I can't remember. That might be like somebody took somebody's family member or something. He did Spotlight, which that's one about like the the Boston newspaper like uncovering like the sexual abuse by priests in the Catholic Church.
Yep.
He did Black Mass, which I've never seen, but I've seen like the commercials for it, and like I see the commercials for it. It's like, oh, this looks like it's going to be a crazy movie, and then I just read bad reviews and never went towards it.
You want it to be better than it is when you watch it, because I watched it and I was like, man, I was hoping for more out of it, like, because I read the book. So,
and the only recent one I recognize is Stillwater, which that's a Matt Damon movie where he's like just a good old country boy or whatever thing from the Midwest and has to go to France to get his daughter out of jail.
Okay. I watched his latest thing, The Pale Blue Eye.
Oh, what's that?
That's the one. It's based on Christian Bale is in it, and I forget who else is in it. Christian Bale's the name you'd know, but it's the Christian Bale plays a guy his name's Augustus Landor, which nobody has a cool name like that anymore. And he
but what about Cadet Edgar Allan Poe?
Yeah, I mean, he was working with Edgar Allan Poe at West Point to solve a murder. And it sounds like really cool, and you're like, oh, this is going to be gory and crazy, and then you watch it and it's like, it wasn't very good. It looked beautiful though. It sounded
Toby Jones is in this movie.
Yeah, oh yeah. He is a which one is he? I think he's one of the detectives. Or maybe he works at West Point.
Oh, Robert Duvall's in this movie? Gillian Anderson's in this movie?
Yep.
Let's see here. Toby Jones plays Dr. Daniel Marquis.
Okay, I think he was it's a weird, convoluted story. Okay. It's like you're really hoping for a lot more. Because Edgar Allan Poe did go to West Point. It's like, oh, wow.
This is a Netflix movie. Okay, that's why I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. And it's not great. At the end, it's like, okay. Edgar Allan Poe does figure it out. Like he's a genius, but it's like it's also kind of disappointing because Edgar Allan Poe is exactly what you think Edgar Allan Poe was in real life. Like he is whiny and kind of angry, but also brilliant and very good at like he has like a Sherlock Holmes insight into things, which Edgar Allan Poe, remember, created the prototype Sherlock Holmes.
Huh.
Yeah, but it was again, I was hoping for a lot out of it, and it's like, okay.
Is it at least better than League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's much better than that. It's actually not bad. It's just not what I hoped for because I always liked like my favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories was like the oh, what's that called? There was the Purloined Letter and Murders at the Rue Morgue, and the detective in that is Sherlock Holmes. Just it was before Sherlock Holmes,
Yeah.
but he used the same techniques, and everyone always said it's like, oh, this is Sherlock Holmes was based on this guy, because it's too on the nose similar.
Yeah.
So I said because I'm more of a fan of Edgar Allan Poe's mystery stuff than is like straight up like there's a demon haunting me. That stuff's good too, but his mystery stuff's better because it's like Murders of the Rue Morgue. If you like, oh, how these people were like torn apart, and it was like at the time it was written, it's like it's still effective. It's like Silence of the Lambs of its day. It's like wow, that's nuts.
Was that like almost a felony for him to write that stuff in the day or something?
I don't remember. He was one of those guys that wasn't popular when he was alive, and then like, he dies, and everyone's like, he's a genius. It's like, huh? That's always that sad shit. And then there's guys that like kill themselves on purpose so they can like, like the guy who wrote The Infinite Jest and all that. And it's like, he just committed suicide so people would think he was a genius.
What a great career move.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The screenplay written by David O. Russell for Silver Linings Playbook, and then it's based on a novel by Matthew Quick. Do you know who Matthew Quick is?
I just know he wrote the book. I don't know anything about him.
I don't know. I read the book. It's fine. It's more wacky, and it's very different. This movie definitely toes the line better, where it's like the movie's not, I mean, the book's not dismissing the mental illness, but it's also more in like internal monologue and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if like, I don't know. Also, like I did the book on tape, so it's like, did you ever do a book on tape for, what is it? Like We Are Bob and We Are Minnie, or what is it? What's the Bob franchise called?
Oh, the Bob verse?
Yeah.
We Are Bob and We Are Minnie or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. No, I've never done that.
Okay, well the guy who read this book, so like it took on a more wacky connotation to me because I associate that guy, the guy who reads it, with those books, and so I was like, the continuation of the Bob verse. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if this was like a successful book or not, or why they picked it up or what. It's also, this is a Weinstein release, so I don't know if that has any like weird connotations to it either.
No, it's just now it's anything that's associated with the Weinsteins or particularly one of them is always tainted, but it's almost unfair. It's like, well, yeah, but the people involved in making the movie or whatever, like, they're not all like went along with that or anything. They weren't masturbating into potted plants or whatever was going on.
Please, that we know. The only kind of like effect they had on the movie that I read is that Jennifer Lawrence wanted to do the character like way more goth, and Harvey said no, and so she's less goth in the movie. That's the only kind of like intervention that he had.
Well, I know when she won her Oscar, she thanked Harvey for whoever he had to murder so she could win the Oscar. And it was like all said in humor, and now you look back on it, it's like that's dark.
I don't know. He got a lot of people Oscars that didn't deserve it. He was great at getting people Oscars.
Oh yeah, he knew what to do. I mean,
yeah, because they were like a small company compared to everybody else, but like if you get your movie at the Oscars, it just has it. The publicity pays for itself. For a movie you barely paid for.
Yeah. How many movies did the Weinstein Company produce and develop that literally had $20-15 million budgets and made hundreds of millions of dollars?
Yeah.
And they just stuck with that formula.
It's like Goodwill Hunting,
Yeah,
Shakespeare in Love.
yeah,
They got Ben Affleck an Oscar
right.
twice. Did he? Because did they do Argo?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they did. Yeah. I don't know, but they seem like they were. There was a whole group of people that worked with them all the time,
Yeah.
and they always. It's like, yeah, just let Harvey do it. He does works his magic, and he did. But he also had this dark side of
Yeah.
insanity. This like sex monster or whatever. And
And
so,
I don't. What was the other brother? There's Harvey, and what's the other Weinstein?
yeah, I can't think of his name. He was more of a horror guy.
Yeah. Well, they did. At one point, they ran two different companies. So like, he what was it called?
Let me look it up.
It's not
Bob Weinstein.
Yeah, Bob Weinstein. But what was the? Because there was like the horror wing. There was like the horror sci-fi wing of
Miramax,
Miramax.
Dimension.
Dimension. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did more of that stuff. So like, I don't know, like what his involvement is, other than like kind of like, well, we got to put both their names on it. But like usually, yeah, he didn't work on the like kind of drama stuff. Harvey was usually associated with that. But I don't know how that stuff works. Nobody knows how Hollywood works. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why Hollywood is Hollywood.
I also have I have no idea. Like,
It just like from the outset, it looks like it should be fun, and it looks like people make a lot of money, and then apparently none of that's true, and it's all just selling your soul to the devil, and just like how that divvies to different devils.
well, I've been, the Writers Guild strike and the Screen Actors Guild strike that's going on right now as we're talking. I've been listening to a lot of people talk about that now that are, because there's a lot of those people are interesting to they just don't normally have time to do interviews, and they can't really crap on Hollywood because that's their
Yeah.
employers. But now they're on strike against them, so they're kind of speaking their mind. And like the one lady who is, she used to be a writer. I think she's more of an organizer and a union like employee for the Writers Guild, and she goes, they were talking about like, because everyone talks about AI and all that stuff, and she's like, yeah, that's a threat. And she goes, but she goes, let me tell you the real problem here with these especially all the streaming service companies, is we can't get residuals from these people because none of them will tell you how many people are watching, because that's all a big secret in streaming. So that tells us one of two things: oh, you're running an investment fraud and no one's watching this, or you're hoarding all the money. Either one of those things are not good.
Yeah.
And a majority of the people that are in the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild make $70,000 a year or less. We're not talking about Tom Cruise is starving to death here or whatever. But she was saying, it's like, so yeah, there's two things going on. We have illegal monopolies that are running, fraud-based businesses, and now that like the interest rates are above 0%, and they just can't float on venture capital money anymore, and their investors are demanding money for demanding a return on their investment. Now they're doing the same thing that management has always done to laborers. They're going to suck all the life out of their employees so they can give that back to the shareholders in terms of value, because they've created no value and the whole thing's a fraud. And I'm like, damn, lady, you're literally like grenading the industry at this point. This is what everyone's always thought for years, and now you're saying it.
Yeah.
It's like you're an actual employee of these people. So it's like, huh.
Yeah, there was one stat I saw, and I don't know how true it is because now I forget what it was associated with. So I'm just going to say, The Big Bang Theory. I don't know what show it's actually. It seemed like a show that was a lesser comedy show, but they said that on Netflix it's generated over 1 billion hours of people watching it, and then it's distributed about $3,000 worth of money to the writers.
Yep.
In like 5 years.
It's a Ponzi scheme, everyone. Either way, it's a Ponzi scheme of greed, whether it's fraud or they're just banking money. Well, because the streaming companies that do report, like, they are tied to other companies like Disney that do, like, Disney has to keep like raising the price on their streaming service. It's like, how's everyone else not doing that? And then you start to wonder, like, well, is it all fraud?
Well, yeah, because they're getting that introductory thing where you're trying to build an audience, and then as the audience dwindles off, you got to raise the price, and we'll see if who sticks around. And then they're just hoping to the god, because there must be, I don't know, there must be some like 30% of people who just forget to cancel their membership, and they're just like free money coming in, and they don't use the service. So there's like,
Yeah.
even though it costs almost nothing to run these services, data wise, I know there's costs other ways, but um, and then what else? What other point?
It's just like an old milk cow that never stops giving milk. It's like, yeah, I just hope that incompetence. Well, that's why I turned like auto pay off on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because I know how many streaming services I pay for right now. It's 3. It used to be 6, but that was like, well, this is costing me too much money.
Yeah.
And even though I miss a lot of shows that people are talking about, and even we talk about stuff sometimes, it's like, yeah, I don't do that anymore. It's like, yeah, between my cable bill to have internet and streaming services, like, dude, that's a car payment every month. I can't be doing that. I'm just not doing it. So it's, but yeah, some people just don't think about it but yeah, I know to a dime, because I get an email reminding me like, oh, we're going to turn you off if you don't. Oh yeah. Okay. I better go make that payment. Because I know you can buy apps to do that, but I just never think of it.
Yeah. Yeah. But also like, you don't know how they like, how they dole out like what's what. Cause I remember that used to be a thing. It used to be a thing. Like you had weird things on the internet. Like the old internet used to be like just clicks was the ultimate number. And that's where you had like punch the monkey things or whatever, where it's like the site would generate clicks because somebody's trying to punch the monkey, and then like,
oh yeah, you could like whack-a-mole with your mouse while you're waiting for porn to download. The old internet, yeah.
But that internet collapsed, and then they kind of changed things around. And I remember like the old Netflix model used to be like something where it's like, in order to generate like a payment to somebody that they're licensing their movie or content from, like the show would have to be watched from beginning to end completely. And it's like, of course people are going to stop watching once the credits come up, and then like, well, then that doesn't count as a full watch, and then they don't have to distribute revenue to them. I don't know how that works now. Because I also heard things like for like our podcast, I heard something that like that's a similar thing. Like it doesn't count as a listen if people stop like 20 seconds before the podcast in. And so like I just tried to check that out, and so I cut off, because I used to lead out with our intro song, but without your dial voiceover of it. It was just the music, and it would trail off at the end. And so I cut that off just to see like, well, obviously if people are like hitting the music, it's like, oh well, it's time to turn it off. So I cut that off to see if that changed anything, and it doesn't, because most of the time, like when I go to check like, is our podcast working, like just me checking and like hitting play, if I go to our thing, our analytics say like that counts as a play. So it's not a full listen, it's just hitting play counts as a play.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know. But I can monitor that stuff because our play count is so low, I can see it.
Yeah, we know like 4 people this month. Amazing.
And 2 of that's me just checking if it works on 2 different services.
Yeah, and sometimes I watch just out of, sheer pit, just a sheer fit of pique. It's like I'm watching myself today. Oh, God, I'm as bad as I think I am.
The cast is Bradley Cooper, Jennifer Lawrence, or Robert De Niro, and a bunch of other people we'll find. So
yeah.
So we have Act 1. We get it's like titles. We get some like humming, and then it says titles. We got Carroll Psychiatric Facility, Baltimore, which I don't know if that's a real place, but it might be.
Yeah, whenever you say that there's like, oh, here's a mental asylum in America, it's like, that's not true. We don't have those. All the crazy people are asking you for $1 as you're walking into a store. That's where they are.
Or it's supported by, well, yeah, it either has to be privately supported by some billionaire whose daughter like took their own life, and so they built a facility, and then it's like, or it's like run by a church or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it got bought out by some like private company that found a way to like, well, if we just cut costs, we can we can generate, this can be a revenue generator for our shareholders. How everything works in America. Let's buy that, cut the costs, and then money appears.
Yeah.
We get Pat's like talking to himself. He's writing a letter. Pat is played by Bradley Cooper, who probably at this time the most famous thing he did was the what are those comedy movies? The Hangover. So,
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
because I know him like from when he first started, where they show I often talk about because it only had one season and it's an American remake called Touching Evil, and he was like an FBI agent in that show, and that was in like 1999 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe no, it was maybe like early 2000. It was like 2001 or something like that.
There was this one, the lady that plays Robert De Niro's wife,
Yeah.
the actress Jackie Weaver. She's an Australian actress, I think. And I know, like, Netflix ports a lot of the Australian crime dramas here,
Yeah.
and I've watched a lot of Australian TV and movies are really, really good, even the stuff you've never heard of here. And I remember there was this movie she was in. I forget. I think it's called Goldston or whatever. It's about a cop, but he's like an Aborigine.
Huh.
But but he's like a really like screwed up guy. Like he's kind of an alcoholic, and but he's also like Aboriginal in a way. Like he's very quiet. He doesn't say much. He just kind of looks at people, and that's how he does his cop work. It's like everyone's lying to me, of course, and but she plays the mayor of this town, and they're trying to do some mining there. It's somewhere on the inside of Australia, not along the nice area around the coast,
Yeah.
but the inside of the country where it's all just death and sand. And they're like trying to build a mine or whatever, but you have to get the local Aborigines have to approve of that. And she's like the mayor, but she's also like a local mob figure too. Like, but she makes cakes she's just like the mom in this movie. Like, I'm making things to eat, but she's also like really evil, and she makes him a cake. The main, what's the guy's name in this movie? Jay or whatever. She's like making him a cake. And he's like, well, is it poisoned or pie? She's always making pies for people. And he's like, well, is it poisoned? And she's like, well, it wouldn't be fun if I told you, because she has this real Australian accent that she doesn't have in this movie.
Yeah.
But when I saw her, I was like, oh God, it's the evil mayor from the, Australian interior. Probably the only one who thought that.
Yeah, so Pat's talking about Sundays like being a good time. I think this is like a
Yeah.
letter to Nikki, his ex-wife, which I don't think you know that yet. So
No.
he's basically trying to even before you know that, I'll just say he's trying to win his ex-wife back and trying to say he's better because he's in a mental health
Yeah, he's
facility.
doing VO on what looks like, it says it's a mental health facility in like the sub, it has like, but it kind of looks like a jail or like a prison too. So it's one of those, like, it's not where you go to get like sober type mental health facility. It's like, well, this is like court diversion for crime, which we later figured out. Yeah, exactly. It's what it was. Okay.
It was Baltimore.
Yeah.
It sounds exactly like a voiceover. You realize like he turns his head and it's like, oh, he's just saying this out loud.
Yeah.
And somebody's knocking at the door trying to hurry him up. It's like, what's he being? We also see Excelsior written on paper on the wall.
Yes.
Which is not a thing in the book. So I was like, it becomes a thing later on. So I guess I know that was a thing that Stan Lee would used to say, which I don't even know what like it necessarily means. I actually explain it later on, but like I don't know why you say Excelsior. Just kind of like a thing you say to like bid goodwill or something. I don't know.
When I hear Excelsior, I think, the failed successor to the Enterprise.
The fastest ship in the fleet with the one flaw.
The death of the transwarp drive. It's like the whole transwarp program failed because Scotty sabotaged the engines, and they just like, oh well, we can't figure it out. I never got that.
Pat, we show this is kind of like a montage, so they keep cutting different things. We show Pat taking his pills, but then like he hid it under his tongue, even though like he opened his mouth to show the person like, look, I swallowed my pills. He spits it out, so he's like doesn't want to take his pills.
Yeah.
We cut to group therapy. We also cut to Pat working out, and then his mom shows up, and it's Dolores, and then she's there to get him out of the facility. They give a ride to Danny, played by Chris Tucker, which this is one of his like second role in like a decade.
And he's great in this. You like to see him. It's oh, Danny's back. He's staged yet another, game.
Yeah, and he's such a fun and different character because, like, I remember I said last time where it's like Hollywood wouldn't give him like interesting roles. They just give him like gangster roles or just roles they think like, oh, we need a funny black person, so here you go, Chris Tucker, and he's like, nah. But I also found out he made like about $50 million off the last 2 Rush Hour movies, so he never needed to work again. So
He was the highest paid actor in Hollywood at one time,
yeah,
based on like 3 movies.
yeah.
Like, okay, cool.
Which I don't know, like what attracted him to this movie, or even if he got paid to do this movie, or just thought it was a good role. But I don't know.
This is where like that the whole Weinstein, we know how to like make things happen stuff. It's probably something like that.
Because I don't even know like what he did after this, because he's still not like in a lot of things, and I don't even know what he's doing. But
Chris Tucker only did Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, which
okay, I never saw. I know of it because it's a ridiculous title.
like a sports drama film that Ben Affleck directed called Air.
Oh, that's recent. Okay, yeah, that's about Air Jordans.
Okay, and then Rush Hour 4 is coming out.
Okay.
Which is like, yeah, why not? Yeah.
Remember, this movie's a decade old, so that's what he's done since.
And was one of the most interesting the second favorite character in The Fifth Element. For me, my first was Zorg, but the second one was Chris Tucker as Ruby Rod. But the Gary Oldman character was the most interesting because that was basically George W. Bush. Yes, I'm evil, and because why not? You know, why wouldn't I be evil? Could I be good?
Pat and his mom give Danny a ride to go to North Philly. We find out Danny was an X-ray technician, and then like he has like ADD and like probably OCD and several addictions from probably a job that requires a lot of detail and creates a lot of what do you call that?
Stress.
Anxiety, stress and anxiety, and he didn't.
If you work in a hospital at that time, you had access to a lot of yummy drugs. So, well, this is going to happen.
And then Dolores gets a call from the facility, and they weren't supposed to let Danny out. So, which it doesn't seem like he's like escaping through a window. He just seems like he just casually rolls out, and they're like, "Oh wait, he's supposed to still be in here."
Yeah, he talks his way out. And then, like, no, because he's not a threatening person at all.
No,
he's not like because I don't know what his deal is, but everyone who's in there is like some kind of criminal diversion to like, well, you have mental illness, so we're not going to prosecute you this time.
He's a very different character in the book. Like he's mentioned a lot and doesn't show up till the end of the book. And also in the book, he's like a rapper who like got in an accident and like his voice changed, so he can't like rap anymore. Or can't rap as fast anymore, and so he got put in a mental health facility, and he didn't talk to anybody for like months. And so the first person he talked to was Pat. And so like he constantly brings up Danny in the book because he has affirmations about like, what black culture is and stuff like this, and who should not say the N-word and things like that. Yeah, but here he's a completely different character and a more funny character.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Pat wants to stop at the library to read Nikki, his ex-wife's syllabus of books because she's a teacher, and so she has books to, like, I'm not sure what grade she teach. It's like middle school or something like that. And so he wants to read the syllabus of books that she has for her kids. Which I remember like in school, like whenever we had to read books, there's never a class where we had to read more than like 2 books a year. Here it's like we got these kids reading like 12 books. I'm like,
yeah, they must be going to like some really fancy private school.
I don't know. Did you ever have like a class like that where you had to read like 20 books?
Not in high school.
I mean, sometimes it'd be small books, but I don't know. They're giving them like Hemingway and stuff like that. I don't know. I actually don't know how long A Farewell to Arms is, but
274 pages. None of the Hemingway books are as long as you think they are.
Okay, well, who wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls? Hemingway? Okay, that's a long book, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Maybe I'm confusing that because I remember that was like a double VHS, so maybe I'm confusing the movie length with the book length.
Let's see. Farewell to Arms is 355 pages, which isn't that really that big? To
No.
me, big books don't start until you get to like 700 pages. Now, some people like want to read books that are 200 pages. They're like taxed. It's like, no, that's not. But again, I read a lot of history stuff where it just like, yeah, it says 1,500 pages, but half of it's like, this is why I came to this conclusion, and this is where I got this information. So it's it's a little different than like 500 pages of like just pure fiction. That's a lot. That's a lot of work too. It's really hard.
um, yeah, I don't know how long Lord of the Flies is. It can't be that long.
No, Lord of the Flies isn't very long.
Okay.
That's probably I don't know, 250 pages maybe.
I think in the book they talk about he's reading like what's that called? Is it the bell jar or what's that called? Or what the hell is that? Is there something called the bell jar?
Not that I know of.
What the hell am I thinking of?
They were thinking they were doing Lord of the Flies and
No, in the book, in the book Silver Linings Playbook, they talk about the book The Bell Jar.
oh, okay. I didn't read the book, so
Okay, yeah, it's a Sylvia Plath book. I don't know who she is. I just hear that name a lot. So it's a depressing book where, like, I think like a pregnant lady dies at the end of it or something.
Oh, okay.
Or she kills her. No, the character kills themselves by putting their head in the oven, which I guess is the same way Sylvia Plath died or something.
Oh, just gas themselves.
Um, let's see here. It's Pat Senior. That's played by Robert De Niro. It's almost kind of unexpected in this movie. That's probably what threw me off, which made me expect like, oh, this is a serious drama because Robert De Niro's in it. When it's like he's kind of a, I mean, he plays it a serious character because his character like is also flawed and has mental illness, but he's just managed to get away with it his whole life.
This is what I call. This is when De Niro. This was like the beginning of the De Niro. I'm gonna be like a third character in rom coms, and this is probably the best one of all the ones I've seen, because there's a
Yeah.
part in this movie where it's like, oh, he really turns it on, and it's like, oh, it's like, oh, it's really sad. Like it almost brings you to tears. Like he's so upset because the things didn't work out for for what he's doing and all this, and it's like, oh wow, that's like he's really bringing in this movie when you wouldn't think that he would be because of the kind of character he was playing, and then it's like, no, these people really have drama, and
Well,
for
yeah.
the power of acting in this movie, like it's still, this is Robert De Niro was like did a big part of this movie.
Yeah, well, because you have to like before this would probably be like the Meet the Parents and Meet the Focker movies,
Yeah,
and this would be after that, and you'd probably expect to like, oh, he's just doing that again, but no, it's a way different thing.
yeah.
um, but what would be a nice curveball because it's like, okay, you expect this because here's the sequence of events, and then it's like, oh, here it's something different. There's weird tension between the Pat Senior. um, they're also like in the middle of talking about Eagles football, which is a big thing in both this and the novel. It's probably bigger in the novel. It's like half the novel is dealing with Eagles football.
Yeah.
Here they go to one game. In the book, they go to like 6 games.
Yeah, I can tell this book was kind of written around like, I love football and I want to tell a compelling story. And
Well, also like all the football details, including in this movie, are taken from a real Eagles season, like the 2008 season.
yeah,
So they keep all those details. So presumably this is 2008 when this is happening. So, but yeah, the weird tension between the Pat and his dad is that like Pat Senior didn't know they let him out, so he's like, "Hey, what's going on here? Did you escape?" And he's like, "No, they let me out. It's part of the plea bargain or whatever because I met certain goals or whatever." Which I guess plea bargain was a clue in, like, oh, he's in there for legal reasons, not necessarily he didn't check himself in or wasn't committed. It was like a legal necessity for his sentence to not go to jail. We also learned that Pat Senior lost his job, and he's like now he's bookmaking in the meantime. Which I guess if this is 2008, then like yeah, everyone's losing their jobs. So
well, they say it's like lost his job, but then like the other guy says, well, it's like he lost his pension, which like, okay, that actually makes more sense for a guy that age.
okay,
It's like, yeah, he lost his pension, so he's going into like pro bookmaking, you know,
Yeah.
because he's like, because really the thing is not like, oh no, he's bad at it and the family's sinking. It's like, no, he's good at it. Actually, he needs to like start a restaurant to hide all the money he's making as a bookie. It's like, oh, okay, so he's like, it
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
don't get the whole restaurant thing because they never say what his job was, but there's nothing to tell me that like, oh, he'd be good to run a restaurant. So I have no idea what that's about. So yeah, I guess embezzlement sounds like a better idea than what you're doing. It's like,
Yeah.
because he's never like making food, so it's not like he was a cook or anything like that. So
Well, it's always his wife make. I made Krabby Cakes or whatever, you know.
Krabby cakes and homemades.
Homemades, yeah, that's it. Which actually sounds really good. Whatever it is, it's probably something great.
I believe homemades is just a sloppy Joe. It's just a different name for a sloppy Joe. I believe.
Oh, okay.
I believe. There's actually a lot of different names for sloppy joes because it's because a sloppy
Made
joe's,
rights.
yeah,
Sloppy Joes.
I mean, it's basically just it's
Loose
basically
meat sandwich.
yeah. It's
Yep.
basically like you're making tacos, but you forgot to put the seasoning in, and you didn't have any tacos, so you put it on hamburger buns.
Yep. White man's tacos right here, baby.
That's my favorite cover band.
White man's tacos. Ain't no sandwich in this bitch. Just go complete insane clown posse with it.
Pat
I was
wants
thinking
to.
about some stars and shit. It's like, huh? Okay, cool. We're Christian now. Wow, white man's tacos took a turn. It's a cult. What the cult?
What happened to that man's wife?
It's a tax write-off.
We got the insurance money to make the band work, but now we have to find God.
Yep.
In a volcano.
Before we die, because otherwise we're going to hell.
Pat wants to get in shape physically and mentally to win back Nikki. Here we don't really, in the book it's a big thing because you don't see them, so they just say things like he's like, you know, they don't say like he used to be fat, but everyone says he lost weight, but they also say like how much like he's got like toned muscle and he's gigantic, where it's here it's just like it's Bradley Cooper the whole time, so there's no transition thing. It's just like, and there's nothing
well,
like,
you know, what they're doing though is he is generally wearing baggy clothes.
yeah.
So it's like you could believe like, oh, he used to be like a really fat guy, and so because if he like took off his shirt and it was like all toned muscle, it's like, okay, take it from a really big fat guy who's lost a bunch of weight. Like you don't look like that. Even you know, if you get into shape and you're in your 40s, it's like no, you keep the shirt on. It's like yeah, you lost weight, but nah. Keep it to yourself. You don't like look like Bradley Cooper actually looks like with his shirt off. So.
Yeah. It's not, Bradley Cooper's in good shape, but he's not like, you know, he's not like a muscle man or anything, but
Yeah.
but that's the way they talk about them in the book. Here it's just kind of like, oh, he lost weight, a lot of weight, you look good. So that's kind of all we get. Here Pat learns that Nikki sold the house and moved away, so he's kind of distraught about this information. In the book it's way different because it's like the same stuff happens, but it's like here it's like they say he's been in the mental health facility for 8 months. In the book, they don't tell him how long he's been in there, and then he finds out he was in there for 3 years, and he basically forgot about the whole time. And then he's like slowly remembering all the stuff that happened because he doesn't remember beating up his wife's the guy that cheated on him.
Yeah.
So that'll be in the end Act 1. So basically, it's like, oh, he wants to get in shape and win Nikki back. So that's basically his part of the movie for the moment. And then it changes. But so we have Act 2. We get Pat gets mad at reading A Farewell to Arms, where he comically throws the book through the window outside. And so he wakes up his parents at 4 a.m. in the morning, and so he's like explaining like how like he's mad because it doesn't have a happy ending. He's like, all that struggle is for nothing if it doesn't have a happy ending.
And then here you just get you good insight into the mental illness and anxiety that consumes him.
Yeah.
Because like no one would rationally like, I've got to talk about this with somebody.
I don't know, but like I definitely understand that because I you got to be in the mood for like these kinds of like heavy dramas because you don't want to put all that effort in and it's all for nothing. And it's, it's supposed to have like deep, long standing commentary about life and stuff like that. But like in the moment, it's like, well, that was boring, and now it upsets me, and I don't like that. Because that's why the movie's called, or book's called Silver Linings Playbook, because he has this whole philosophy about finding silver linings, which is like everything that happens, there's like one good outcome that comes out of it, which isn't necessarily true, but he needs to believe that for his recovery to at least get started. You never know if it's going to happen because you're never going to fully recover, but you just need to not go crazy.
Oh, okay.
But also, this is also it's kind of funny because he mentions in here about a dance scene in Farewell to Arms and it being boring. So, so foreshadow, which that doesn't happen in the book, but they don't talk about a Farewell to Arms in the book. So, then we cut to Pat Senior's out running, which that must have been great to be woken up at 4 a.m. and then get up 2 hours later to go for a run. Whatever. Right. But yeah, Pat Senior's finishing his run, and so Pat is about to go out running and here he has the garbage bag on, which is very funny. It's because the first time I saw this, I didn't know like what that was. I was like, why is he wearing a garbage bag? But it's like they have these things that's more professionally made. They're called sauna suits, where it's basically just makes you sweat a lot. And so he's essentially doing the same thing with the garbage bag by just keeping the body heat on your body and making you sweat more. So.
Yeah.
A lot of wrestlers do this, but that's generally you don't want to do that because it's a great way to cause overheating and exhaustion and to die in the middle of a run. So, but here he's in Philly, so I don't know what kind of the temperature is like in Philly. I'm guessing it's 4 seasons there. So
yeah, it's kind of like that's when the Midwest kind of transitions into the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, it's like Halloween shows up pretty early, so we're gonna be in. This movie probably starts in fall, so
yeah.
Let's see here. So here we get like Pat is being torn between things because Pat Senior wants him to fix a broken window, and then Dolores wants him to go to therapy, and so he ends up going to therapy. Oh, and he wants to go for a run, so he has to go to therapy because that's a court mandated thing, so he's got to do that or he's going to go back to the mental health facility. So we get to the therapy office, and Pat gets angry about a song that's playing in the waiting room, which I didn't write down the song. What is the song? Did you write it down? What the song is?
No, I forgot which one it was. Because it was a which one is it? It was played at their wedding, and it was yeah, I forget which one it was. Because it's not really very clear. It's just like, it's not a song you really think about. But it's like, yeah, once they describe it, it's like, oh, yeah, that song. I don't have it in my notes. Because to me, it was just like, oh, the song from his wedding made him go nuts because he was hearing it when his wife was cheating on him.
My Cherie Amour by Stevie Wonder. Is that the
okay?
Song?
Yep.
I think it was a Stevie Wonder song. Okay.
Yep.
Oh wait, no, there's another Stevie Wonder song. What is it? Crap. I'm looking at Internet Movie Database version of the soundtrack, which is very unreliable.
Oh.
Where's the other? Oh, there's another song called "Don't Worry About a Thing" by Stevie Wonder. I'm not sure. It must be that first one. Oh. Yeah, if you hear it, you'll know it's like, oh, that song. So
yeah.
can't play it for you here, so it's up to you. Here's homework for you. Yeah, in the book this is very different because in the book he has like hallucinations of Kenny G and then starts hearing Kenny G music and that's what sets him off. And then Kenny G becomes a physical hallucination that like haunts him throughout the book.
I wonder why they didn't do that in the movie.
Yeah, they don't really have moments of like he's not seeing this, but he does talk about stuff where he thought something was happening and he was having delusions. So like that, they do mention that, but they don't show any delusions, which is a good thing for a movie about mental illness, where you want to try to be positive about mental illness. or not really positive about it, but like try to be like, well, this is what goes on, and it's hard to deal with. So, um, but anyways, yeah, we have therapy with Cliff, and apparently Cliff is the Indian therapist, and apparently he played that song on purpose because immediately, like when Pat hears that song, he starts accusing people in the waiting room. Is like, did you do this on purpose? And then like you find out later, like he has like delusional conspiracy stuff that happens, and it turns out like, oh no, he was right. His delusions were correct. He thought it was all about him. People were plotting against him, and they were.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Cliff,
so that's the thing here. Like in this movie, and there's also stuff that goes on in the movie that leads you to believe. Like, if we got into the cop part yet, where the cop shows up? Okay. So, okay. I'll wait.
But he's talking with Cliff, and Pat says that he doesn't want to take his medicine because it makes him foggy, and then also makes him bloated and other things like that. Here he recounts the incident of what he went to the mental health facility for, and it's because Pat got home early from work, which we never know like what his job was or what he did. He apparently worked at the school.
He was a substitute history teacher at a high school.
Oh, okay.
Who was trying to get like a full-time gig because his wife worked full-time at that high school.
Yeah.
So he was kind of a struggling guy, but we don't know what because we see what he's like now. So it's like, what was he like to live with? Like, he was obviously like trending down.
Yeah.
That point. Because usually your wife doesn't like just do that to you unless she's trying to drive you away.
Or they didn't know he had mental illness or what to call it.
Yeah, he was in the movie is like undiagnosed until it's like, oh, he's getting ready to go to trial for almost beating a man to death. He actually caught sleeping with his wife, which I think might be extenuating circumstance. I mean, you're not supposed to like beat on people no matter what they attack you.
He was stabbing my wife with his penis.
Yeah. I thought she was in duress. It's like, why did you feed him his head into a wood chipper? To protect myself. Your wife was trying to pull you off. I thought
I was in danger. That was the only way to stop the danger.
Your wife was trying to stop you. It's like it was Helsinki syndrome or whatever it is, where you fall in love with your kidnapper. That's not what happened in the movie, though.
So we learned that Pat gets home early from work. This is him recounting the incident, and so we see like kind of like his perspective of it. That song is playing, which is also the song he got married to, so that has double meaning. Because also like throughout the rest of the movie, he wants to remember getting married to Nikki, but then that also leads off into like her cheating on him, which like triggers him. So his wife was cheating on him with the history teacher, which apparently he would be the substitute for, I guess.
Yeah. Well, he was at school like subbing for that guy while that guy was with his wife. That's kind of like the weird.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just reading into that, but that's why again I thought this movie was like going to be a total unreliable narrator type thing, because it's like so much of this seems on the nose. But all right.
Which the guy, the history teacher here, he's I don't know if you watch *Halt and Catch Fire*, but he's like the Texas manager that's running the business for them.
Oh, okay. I thought I recognized him from something.
Because he's like an older, bald guy, so that's why it's kind of weird. It's like, why would you cheat on me with him? Like, I mean, I don't necessarily say that, but that's just kind of thing you could pick up on, where it's like, oh, she's cheating on him with an older man. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, here they talk about like, well, he was undiagnosed, which I'm guessing now he is diagnosed bipolar disorder. Yeah. And he also has delusional episodes, because he also mentioned where he thought the history teacher and his wife were smuggling money like through
embezzling money from the school
and cheating on him behind his back. And he was like, well, it turns out only one of those was true. Then we cut to okay, I guess it could be Saturday or Monday, who knows. His dad wants Pat to watch football with him, because his dad, here we see like Pat Senior has full of OCD rituals. Like he has to have he's got like 3 remotes and they got to be set in a certain place. He's like holding a handkerchief in a certain way. They're always like, the mom's always making homemades and Krabby Patties. I don't know if that's a part of the ritual, or I'm not sure. It's just something like everybody will enjoy.
That's what she does. It's like there's peace in the house when I do this.
Yeah.
Because people that are like into sports that much are like, oh yeah, it's lots of yelling and screaming. And I've been in houses where people are that into sports, and I hear it, and I'm like, is everything okay? Did a fight break out in the living room? Like, what's everyone? Oh, they scored a point or a goal. Great, cool.
Yeah, here it's just like, well, the Eagles game kind of really brings out his OCD, whereas in the book it's just more about his entire emotion is wrapped around how well the Eagles are doing.
Yeah,
So is he happy or sad is completely independent of his own emotions. It's only how well the football team is doing.
yeah. He has no control over his actions. He is just a sports automata. It's like this is. I've wrapped so much. I've now transferred my like any volition I have over myself as a human being to sports because that's the only way I can deal with life. Whereas I do that with alcohol. So, kidding, I don't. But, or do I?
But here he's making money off of his disorders. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, is this a ritual? Is this superstition and compulsive disorder, or is this like just like a guy watching the stock ticker, like, come on, come on? Yeah, I don't know what it is.
But anyways, because Pat has dealt with, or been around a lot of different mental illnesses, so he recognizes this in his dad, and because this reminds him of the mental health facility, he's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Because his dad's like rubbing the handkerchief and look at, come on, watch the game. You got to watch the game. It's the only time they win is when you watch the game. It's like, no, these things are not related, and it's like, this is how crazy people talk. Okay, I'm gonna go run around in a garbage bag now.
So Pat runs by the school and scares an old colleague.
Yeah.
Which this interaction's kind of funny and scary at the same time because you can understand why she's afraid, but he's being jovial. And there's sometimes where he kind of like hugs her. It's like, oh, I crossed the line, and she's screaming, but he's like, oh, it's okay, I got. But also, that like Nikki moved away, so that I don't think there's any danger of Nikki being here. But
yeah.
I forget what learns in this encounter, but I hear Pat.
Yeah, there's something that happens. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I forget what he learns from this lady here, but basically he learns something. He's like, it's good enough for me. I was asking for a job back, and they're saying like, yeah, maybe, but she's just saying that to get him away from her.
Yeah, because this woman's acting like he's insane, and he's also like doing like Bradley Cooper's doing like the Mel Gibson crazy manic, like, aren't you glad to see me? If I think he's doing that kind of shit. It's like nobody's comfortable with like, yeah, you seem like you're healed. You're really selling the shit out of this. It's like, no, I'm glad it's okay. Get away. Don't beat my head in or whatever.
Well, I heard the one of the reasons given, and who knows, David O. Russell apparently said the reason you hired Bradley Cooper for this role is because he said Bradley Cooper looked like a man who was always angry and trying to hide it.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So then Pat meets Ronnie, who's like an old friend. Which this role in the book, I think Ronnie's a character in the book, but a lot of Ronnie stuff is like gets transitioned to the brother in the book. It's more like his brother is like his kind of like longtime friend and stuff like. But here they separate them. So yeah, here's where he mentions like, oh man, you lost a lot of weight, you're looking good. And here he gets an invitation to dinner, which you don't know if he's just like, because the previous scene this is like this lady wanted nothing to do with him. So here's another interaction. It's like, does this guy also want nothing to do with him? And then they're talking about like his wife hates him and stuff like that. And then it turns out, oh, she invited him to dinner. And like that turns out to be true. It's like, oh, okay. So like everyone's not lying to each other. It just seems weird.
Yeah, it would almost make more sense if they were lying to each other.
Yeah.
It's like, I'd like it better if they weren't like being honest. It's like, oh no, they're just this screwed up and sad.
But yeah, Ronnie apologized.
Like, this is the truce we have with life. Yeah. It's like, huh.
But Ronnie apologizes for not like going to visit him while he was in the health facility because, but he's also said like, we just had the baby, which he's only been there for 8 months, so that's understandable.
Yeah.
Oh, then there's what is it? Oh, there's a confrontation. I think this is at the parents' house because Pat's like trying to call Nikki. And this is where the cop shows up to warn Pat about like his restraining order.
Yes.
Oh, because he ran by the school, so now somebody saw that and was like, you can't be within her. But like that was weird because it's like, well, she's gone, right? So he wasn't even, but I'm guessing they're saying he can't even be with 500 feet of.
Well, the school probably institutionally doesn't want him around, and they have
Yeah.
some kind of restraint against him.
Or does it imply that Nikki still works at the school, but she just like moved away from the town?
I don't know. We never see her until the very end, and
Yeah.
it's like very quick. So it's like, yeah, I don't. I'm assuming after that big, huge fiasco, she, as a teacher in a high school, she probably moved out of that town, but we don't know. Maybe.
But yeah, was Officer. Was it
Keo?
Keo, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a real name. Have you ever heard that before? You don't
Yeah,
know?
I've heard that name. Yeah.
Oh, what kind of origin does that name have? Is that like Scandinavian or like Polish or something?
I am guessing that's probably German.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong. No, it's also a financial term.
What's the term mean?
It is a retirement plan for self-employed people where you can defer the taxes, kind of like an IRA or something.
Oh, okay.
But it's if you're like your own business or whatever. That's an Irish name. Weird.
Huh. Okay. I guess that makes sense. There's seems to be a lot of Irish
It's
people.
an Anglicanized version of. Oh, it's a Gaelic name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, can't say that word. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce Gaelic.
Okay.
So, like, okay.
It's like when elves.
So he's an Irish cop from Philadelphia. Essentially, is who this guy is. Or no, where are they at?
Yeah, Philadelphia. Yep.
Yeah, the Eagles. That's right, the Eagles, Philadelphia.
Actually, there's some part where they're talking about being in New Jersey, but no, they're in Philadelphia.
Yeah, all those places. Philadelphia is like the eastern part of Pennsylvania, so it all runs together.
Yeah. Like Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York are actually and New Jersey are like all like in a line. They're really close together. So
yeah, in like 100 years, that's Mega City 1 and Judge Dredd. That's what you're dealing with. In like 20 years ago. I'm sorry. Yeah. Because they had Judge Dredd was 1999.
Let's see. So yeah, the cops are supposed to be kind of like, this represents authority and like, hey, you're going back if you don't calm down. We cut to therapy again. Here's where you get the Pat explains like his silver linings, like kind of philosophy, which every time he says that, like Cliff's like, you need to come up with a plan. And I'm like, is his silver lining thing not a plan?
Yeah. It seems like is that a philosophy or a plan or both?
I mean, his plan is get into shape and try to win Nikki back. So.
Yeah. And only really one of those things he can control.
Yeah. But here's also where we learn that Cliff likes the Eagles, that's this therapist.
Yeah. Therapist played by Anupam Kher, a famous Indian actor who you've seen in other stuff. He's been in like billions of Indian movies, but also some American movies. He's been in like 7-hour-long Indian movies where people see half the time. You know those movies.
Yeah. Just want to take a look. What's his top ones? Oh yeah, I don't recognize any of his top movies.
He's been in a lot of American movies, so I recognized the guy as soon as I saw him.
Oh yeah, he has 440 credits. So yeah, he's been in a lot of things.
He was also like the chairman of a university over there about acting, he's like a big name guy over there.
Then we cut to Pat shows up for dinner. He immediately wants to leave. He's also wearing a Deshaun Jackson jersey that his brother got him. In the book, this is a way different thing. In the book, he has. So it was like at the time they in the book they mentioned him. It's a guy named Hank Basket, and he was like an undrafted rookie, and so like it's seen as like he's kind of like this diamond in the rough player. and he has a Hank Basket jersey, and everyone's like, "Where'd you get that?" So it's like, so everybody loves that he has a Hank Basket jersey because basically nobody has one, and they're like, "Yeah, these are underdogs." But here's just Deshaun Jackson. Who I don't know. I think he was a running back. I don't know. The Veronica character says he was a rookie of the year, so I'm guessing that was the previous year. So,
Okay.
I mean, the Eagles have been a good football team for a long time. You know, just the Patriots ended up winning the most of the time they were good. So, they're still a good team. I think they won the Super Bowl like 3 years ago or something like that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
they've always been a good team. But anytime you have like a good enough team, it's always a disappointment. It's like, we never win the big one.
Yeah. Well, I grew up I'm in the Detroit metro area. So.
I don't know. The Pistons win every once in a while, and you did the Tigers finally win one? They won one like a couple years ago, right? Because they
They
lost.
went to the World Series.
They've won to a bunch and lost most of them, but I think they won one, but I can't remember. So
No, they didn't have one since the 80s. The last
okay.
time they had a big sports burn down in Detroit was when the Tigers won the World Series.
Oh, okay. Well,
and I don't, like I said, the only sport I know anything about is football, and that's because of my son. So it's like,
the Lions.
I don't know how the Pistons do or how the Tigers do unless I happen to see, or the Red Wings. It's like,
usually the Red Wings are a well-respected team. I don't know if they're good now, but they've won championships before.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the Lions, I believe they've never won a championship, and it's like one of the oldest teams to never win a championship. So
founding team, never been to the Super Bowl. For reasons. Can't get into it because of who owns the team and who signs my paychecks, but there's always reasons.
It is a difficult division to be in.
Yeah, it
is. So he comes up to dinner wearing the jersey, which Veronica, it's Ronnie's wife, hates that, but she she doesn't tell him to go away. She's like, oh, okay. Here we have like kind of a moment where like Ronnie unloads his pressure onto Pat, like about like him dealing with his wife. It's like, oh man, the pressure's just getting to me. And it's kind of funny because it's like, okay, this guy needs a little bit of therapy, but he's choosing to do none.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, you're crazy. Let me unload it because like nobody's gonna believe you if I tell you these things, and nobody wants to hear these things from me. So I'm gonna tell you because you'll understand.
I can't talk to my wife about this because she just wants a bigger house, but that we remodel constantly inside, something weird like that.
Veronica is played by Julia Stiles, which I don't know what she's doing now, but I always liked her in things. She kind of, I don't know, like her big early thing was like that. Oh, was that? Oh, what is it? It was like 13 Reasons Why, or no. 10 was it like 10 rules through what the hell did she do? Now I have to look it up. It was some rom-com.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
And she's also very believable as Jennifer Lawrence's sister because they weirdly look alike.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, that was some good. It was just funny to see her in this as like it's like, oh yeah, I remember her.
Yeah, just a second. Well, yeah, she became like, she was like a bit part in the Bourne franchise, and then like every subsequent movie she got like raised up to a new level, which that was kind of interesting. But
and then she did Mona Lisa Smile.
Yeah, it looks like she's doing a lot of like voice work and TV stuff nowadays.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. What are you gonna do?
Hey, it's hard, Got to make money somehow.
Yeah. And then, so Veronica's sister shows up as Tiffany, played by Jennifer Lawrence. She comes over. In the book, she's like older than Pat. Here, she's like, I don't know. She's like 10 years younger than Bradley Cooper or something like that.
She was 22 when she won the Oscar for this.
Yeah,
a year older than my son. She won an Oscar. It's like, oh, okay.
I mean, she did start like pretty young and like pretty like drama heavy movies, so like she's good at that. But and here she's coming off of like the Hunger Games, but even then it seemed like she's too young for this role, but she does a good job with it.
Yeah.
here we have Pat and Tiffany have an awkward conversation. Here's where it's basically we learn that like in the book there's a saying Pat keeps using where he's like because he has internal monologue, so it's like the advantage of a book where it's like he thinks the bad things he wants to say, but then he says something else, and then the like thing he says in his head where he's in the book he says, "I say that because I'm trying to be nice rather than being right." Where here he just says what's on his mind. Like
he also seems to be like, oh, is he bipolar and autistic? Like, because he's someone who you like tell him something, it's like, don't talk about her husband died. It's like immediately like an autistic guy would be like, I heard your husband died. Tell me about it. Like, they have they're just like, I must know. This is interesting. I don't care why you have feelings about this. It's just, I gotta know.
So yeah, we immediately introduce a character, and what we know about them is that their husband died and they got fired. And he's like, "So why'd your husband die? Why'd you get fired?"
Yeah.
And they just kind of brush it off.
Which is supposed to be his insecurity, I think.
Yeah.
But in the movie, it just comes across as like, oh, he's really socially backward, or he's a jerk. It's like, I don't know which. Because he's trying to establish like this woman's so attractive, he's immediately intimidated by her, so he's trying to like make everything awkward so he can not deal with his emotions or something. I don't know what's going on.
It's definitely because it has like they have like point of view where he like looks at like her nails, her necklace, which also has her cleavage in the shot and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, he's checking her out. And this is like that makes him feel guilty because he's trying to win Nikki over. So the thought of like, oh, I'm being attracted to somebody else, well, that's in the way of my goals. What else about but yeah, it's like when he's like this, it's like, well, why did it? Because the intimation here is that like he went to a mental health facility, and now everyone has a different view of him, which makes it seem like he used to be a different person that seemed normal. And then from what we see as the audience is like, there's no way anybody thought this guy was normal ever.
Yeah, no one was like, I can't believe that happened. It's like, no, I would absolutely believe that, like of course Pat was this way. Now he's using his words to just, like, oh, I have this problem, so this is my agency to act this way now. It's like, oh, before everyone just thought you were just a weirdo. Okay.
So then we cut to dinner, and it's very awkward. But then Pat and Tiffany finally bond over talking about psych medication, which is very funny because it makes everyone else uncomfortable. And they're like, "Oh, were you on Klonopin?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, that knocked me the hell out." Or whatever this stuff is they're talking. Yeah. I think all the drugs are real they're talking about. I don't know.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
I know lithium is a hell of a drug that you only
that's
use.
Like super depression.
Yeah.
that's for like the Grim Reaper's like, damn dude, you're depressed. Like that's when you go on lithium.
But here's where we see that the strife between Tiffany and her sister, because like Veronica keeps trying to like direct her, because it's like, well, obviously you're wrong and I'm the good sister, so I got to tell you how to do things. And then Tiffany absolutely hates that because she's like, because she keeps saying like, it's like, hey, talk to me, because she's like apologizing for her sister, and she's like, don't talk about me in the third person, just talk to me. So she hates when her sister apologizes for her.
Which actually, yeah, you would really hate that if you had a sibling that acted that way. Like, of course I know the right answer. She's dumb. She's the failed version of me.
So then Tiffany wants to leave, and then she asks Pat to walk her home. So we cut to them, like the walk home. Here they stop at her house, and Tiffany offers sex, but Pat explains that he's married. And he holds up his like ring fingers, like, see, I'm married. And she's like, yeah, I am too. And she also still has the ring on. And he's like, yeah, that's different because he's dead.
Yeah, immediately goes into autistic guy again.
And then that makes her cry. And then like they hug. She hugs him, and he kind of hugs her back to kind of comfort her. He's like, oh, that was wrong.
At first he's like, what's this? She's hugging him, and his hands are out like this. Like, what's going on? What's this? What are we doing? Like, he doesn't understand any emotions at all now for some.
But then immediately after the hug, she slaps him in the face. So,
Which she should, because he's being an ass.
yeah,
I mean, good on him for like not like, yeah, let's go sleep with the mentally ill girl, because
yeah,
it's like that's obviously not a thing you should do because this chick has problems, and sex isn't going to make this like, oh,
yeah.
she snapped right out of it. It's like, no, 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 no. Now you have someone following you home.
And well, I wrote it as an addition, but it's like she lives in like a remodeled garage in the back of her parents' house. So
That she built with her dead husband's insurance money.
yeah,
So, which is
yeah.
extra, like super sad. Like, I'm going to live in this temple of his death, and it's my dance studio, which I'm like barely adequate at, but it's my dream.
Yeah.
The dream of a dead husband that built, the dream that a dead husband built.
Which I think in the book she does build a studio, but I don't think she like lives. I don't think it's like. I don't think she's living with her parents at the moment. I can't remember. I thought that was.
I just wonder what the
thing.
tax implications of that would be. But I know they're different in different places.
You built a living space above it. No.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, is that their property taxes just double, and she's crazy living near her parents? That's got to be great for her parents. It's like, boy, they got us airtight. They get us both ways.
What's the HVAC situation in that garage?
Yeah, I mean, these are things that like immediately my mind jumps to.
I mean, this is Philadelphia, so you got 4 seasons there. You got to worry about all guys.
Yeah.
You have that
like,
garage door that goes right to the wood plank floor for the studio. Like, what's moisture gonna do? That you gotta control that somehow.
Yeah, you put the special floor down to bounce on when you dance, but it's like, yeah, what's that going to be like in the winter and the summer? What's your moisture game?
And this is where me and Nathan stopped watching the movie. No.
Yeah, I'm worried about like tax codes and building codes. And just thinking like, well, how do you maintain humidity and stuff in there? And how does this studio work? Like, we're more disconnected than the emotionally disconnected characters in the movie, because we're like trying to figure out what's the most tax efficient way to build a mental illness dance studio on the back of your parents' home. Like, how can I bring this up to code?
Let's we cut to Pat gets home. He's anxious because of this, after this encounter.
Which is like every bad emotional thing you could have happen to a guy who just got out of the clink for all kinds of other bad emotional stuff. All of it also out of his control too.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing he could control is like not beating that guy to senseless. But again, like if I came home and saw that, I would probably, and I'm not a violent person, but, and if some guy's like, oh, you better leave now, it's like, oh, my house? I don't think so. It's like, you're going to leave too. You're going to the one who's going to leave, but you're not walking out of here.
But they saw him looking around for stuff, and later he wakes up his parents again at in like the midnight hours. So he's been looking for that tape he's looking for his wedding tape, and he's apparently been looking for it for like 6 hours or something.
Yeah, just and parents, of course, the classic parents of that age. It's like both sleeping in a twin bed. It's like they're just like, what's going on? What's going on?
Yeah, and I wrote like the reason he's looking for his wedding tape is because he's anxious about like falling in love with someone else who isn't Nikki. Which could be a thing. I don't know. So he has a breakdown. He's like screaming about the wedding video. Pat like accidentally knocks down his mom, which then his dad just tackles Pat and starts hitting him. He kind of hits his dad back once, but then like restrains himself kind of. There's some neighbor kid that keeps showing up to like write a report about mental illness.
Yeah, he has one of those little flash cameras. Yeah.
Which this time, like Pat Senior like chases down the kid to his house and like has a weird conversation with the parents at night. Which the kid's just laughing about, which it's like, yeah, that's a young person.
Yeah.
They're just like, here's something really serious, and they don't care. And it's hilarious.
I hate my elders and like to watch them be confused and angry.
I can't remember. I think the cop shows up later on, but about this
No,
incident.
the cop shows up because the neighbors are calling the police because they're like
Okay.
yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs, and it's
Okay.
'cause everyone's all freaked out. So Officer Kehoe shows up again, which again, this was I'm still in my mind thinking it's like, oh, this is Fight Club or something. Like there's one guy represents the system. There's one cop in Philadelphia that's always here, always on. This guy's not doing other calls. He's not doing anything else. He's always around. He shows up again later 3 times.
Yeah.
But so I'm still waiting for that like turn that never comes, even though they're clearly setting it up that way. Or I mean, they're not, but maybe either I'm reading it into it or they're fooling with me. I don't know. Because it is a movie about mental illness. Now I assume everyone in the movie is out to get meat
Yeah.
in some way. So,
which again is like probably one of the reasons I like this movie more than I think I would is because it doesn't take the cheap turns I think it will most of the time. Yeah, and it's a movie made in 2012, so they didn't really care about accurate depictions of mental illness then. But
no, we're still in the golden age of, this is before everything started to suck entertainment wise. At least that's what I'm gonna say, so I can be like all the other hacks on the internet. No, but yeah, no, this was just story driven. Because like I know two people who have the problem he does. It's not unsimilar to this, but it's also a lot darker than this.
Yeah.
Because the thing about bipolar, especially, is it's like the high highs and the high lows, but it's also the sad part of it, from what I've seen, is you are aware that you're living in that rotating cycle too. And it's like you're almost starting to dread the next high and low cycle, and you get like manic about that happening. And it's like, oh my God. And the medicine you take is horrible, by the way.
Yeah.
It does drag you down. It makes you feel like shit. I don't have this problem, but I've known two people. There's one of them was on this show at one time, and I've known people that have this problem, and it's not fun. And it's very hard for people that love them and people that know them to deal with. So I'm going to say, for my amateur outside experience of dealing with this as a third party, this movie actually does a fairly good job of like what it does to everyone around them. No, it doesn't resolve itself happily ever, so it's
Yeah, this is more like a gray version of it, because like in most movies, like, oh, they have mental illness. It's just like all like everything now, nothing good can ever happen, and the movie ends, and it's like, isn't mental illness terrible? It's like, yeah, what are we gonna do about it? Nothing. It's not. I gotta
keep my taxes low. Screw everyone.
and then there's the other side of it where it's like, oh, they win the day and they never have mental illness ever again.
Which also doesn't happen.
No. Then we cut to Pat takes his medication and then he fixes the window finally. But he fixes the window by just putting in a whole new window pane, which I'm guessing that's what you do.
Well, that's single pane glass from an earlier age, so you just go get a piece of glass cut. And in that town, you probably go to like the local Ace and you just put that window putty in it. And it's just, this isn't like the windows like we have where it's like triple planed with nitrogen in the middle. No, these aren't newer homes. So,
he goes for a run by Tiffany's house and Tiffany just shows up, which is always funny because she always just like coming out of the opposite frame while he's looking the other way. And she's like, hey, what are you doing here?
Yeah, it like scares. Yeah, she's coming in like a velociraptor from the side. Like you're not expecting it.
And so Tiffany shows up and questions him about why he's running around her house, which obviously he's interested in her and he doesn't want to admit that. But he's physically there, so there's some interest. But then Pat like literally runs away from her. She catches him. She's like cutting through a bunch of houses to catch him, cut him off. So they argue. He calls her a slut, but then he just like turns over and immediately apologizes. Like, well, I knew that was wrong, and I said that out loud. Then we cut to therapy, and here is Pat's apologizing for his incident at his house where he like knocked over his mom and fought with his dad. Here he's saying like he didn't punch his dad at all, but like his dad does have like a cut or a shiner on him, but he has more cuts and shiners on him.
Well, yeah, he's trying to minimize it. Like, well, I could have beat him to death, but it's like, oh, you could have beat your father to death, your elderly father, but you chose not to. Well, that's restraint. God, you are healthy indeed. Yeah. exemplar. No, what do they say? Excelsior. Yeah.
Excelsior. Oh yeah, also in the previous scene, Tiffany mentions like, what happened. He just said like, "Oh, I dropped the weights." It's like that sounds like a lie. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, she has an ear for bullshit
yeah.
throughout the movie. She's like, she's one of those troubled girls. It's like, I know lies when I hear them. I tell them to myself all the time. It's like, one of those chicks.
But yeah, here like, Pat's saying that he hates his illness and he wants to control it, which we know that's like, well, that's the hardest part of this whole thing. You can't. You can just minimize the outcomes, I suppose.
Well, the
Which
one
I get.
guy tell me mental illness is not my fault, but it's my responsibility, something like that. Yeah. He told me that, and I was like, good. It sounds like you got this controlled. See you later. It's like, no, my life still sucks. Come back. Okay, sorry.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that's why Cliff keeps saying like Pat needs to have a plan, because like, well, you can't control this, but you need to have like some sort of like troubleshooting plan in order in case things happen.
Yeah.
So you're right, well, this is broken, so this is what we need to do next. Now this is broken, we need to do this next.
You got to think about this like the 2008 economic collapse. Collapses are always going to come. It's just, how do you manage that? What kind of framework are you building for your inevitable, to have separation from sanity?
Here Cliff convinces that like he needs to help Tiffany because she also has mental illness and is dealing with stuff, but he says like this will impress Nikki. And so that's all he's concerned about. It's like, yeah, that will impress her. It's like, I guess I should help her out. So he goes running with Tiffany. They run down to a diner. He's not saying anything the whole time, this little run. And they run down to a diner. He's like, you want to have dinner with me at this diner? She's like, yeah, pick me up at 7:30. Yeah. So we cut the night that they go to dinner. It's Halloween.
Yeah.
So like the waitress is like dressed as a devil, and there's like kids trick or treating outside and stuff. Pat orders Raisin Bran and Tiffany orders tea.
Yep. This is why these people look the way they do.
Well, in the book, this is way different. The reason he orders Raisin Bran is because it was the cheapest thing on the menu.
Okay.
His mom gave him $40. And he knows that, and so he knows from Nikki, because Nikki used to be a waitress, that if you tip well, that means you're a good person. So he gets the cheapest thing on the menu, so he can leave the rest of the $40 as a tip.
Oh, that's almost redeeming. It's like, not only do you help a working person, but you impress Tiffany, who you like but don't want to admit.
Yeah. But that doesn't happen here. They just have like, it's a weird order.
Yeah.
Which of course the waitress is like mad about. It's like, oh great, like a tip on $6.50 of cereal and tea. Yeah, which one of the reasons I stopped going to restaurants, because I was always going alone, and I know like I didn't get great service because like, oh yeah, obviously like the tip's going to be less because it's not 4 people ordering $20 worth of food.
Yeah. Yeah, it's why I don't eat out. I mean, there's a lot of that too. It's like, well, I mean, the only place I tip good is like the local coffee, which I don't really get the fun drinks anymore because I can't just have like, well, give me the equivalent of a milkshake and call it coffee because it's got 900 calories in it. But yeah, I've got like a $3 cup of coffee and just like, yeah, just put $5 on the thing. Yeah. Here you go. So they're always happy to see me.
I mean, I usually tip well. I mean, I don't know. I'm tipping like 30%. But like, when you're ordering by yourself, like that's still, it's like, well, it's like that's going to add like, $5 to his order, not $50.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but here he justifies. He says he ordered Raisin Bran to signify that it's not a date, and then she discounts that and says like, well, anything can be a date. It's not dependent on whether you order what you order. But here we find out that Pat wants to write a letter to Nikki, and Tiffany says she can get that letter to Nikki because Veronica's still in touch with Nikki.
Yeah,
and so this perks him up because he only wants to deal with Nikki. because that's who he's ultimately trying to impress. But that's just a far-reaching goal that'll never have. Here's Tiffany says she got fired because she had sex with everyone in the office, which I'm guessing literally, which she says that's like, what, 11 people or something?
Yeah.
Which Pat's like, oh, I'm sorry about that. That sounds like it's very difficult. I'm not going to ask any more questions. And then just asks every question.
with the girls too, and she's like, oh yeah. He's like, was it hot? And she's very.
Yeah, it says something like, did they were they older than you and they treated you like they're the teacher and you're the student? And she's like, yeah, they had me sit on their lap. And it's like, they sat on your lap, or you sat on their lap. Which just seems like hilarious and sad, because it's hilarious if she's just fucking with them. It's sad if it's true.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming it was actually true because of things that happened later on, but it's also like, because there are people, that stuff does happen. Like, there are people that get in bad situations and they just become I'm going to have sex with everyone in the collective group I'm working with or whatever.
Yeah.
Always horrible. It's never like, oh, that's hot. It's like, no, it's like, that's really sad and weird, because it's like, it's always nobody loves me, and you just watch someone's like personality just completely just decompose, and they just become like a sex machine. So it's like, I'm gonna fuck my way back to love. It's like, oh God, don't do that, please don't do that.
Well, like, they don't call her a sex addict in here, which would be, I don't know if it's necessarily that or if it's just a part of it, because it's basically like, well, she doesn't value anything about herself, but people seem to value her sexually, so it's like, well, I'll just lean into that, because then I'll have some value in life. And then that leads to nothing but bad things.
Well, she also seems to be someone that has like, it's not bipolar. It's the other one that begins with a B. Oh, borderline personality disorder, which is like, I'm not an expert, but essentially it means you set up situations where there's lots of drama and you're the center of it. It doesn't matter if it's good or if it's bad. You just like the drama no matter what.
Yeah.
And if you're someone who consistently does that, they diagnose you with like, oh, you have borderline personality disorder, which, like, those people can become murderers. It's like, well, how high do you want the drama to go? Are we taking this, like, are we climbing the mountain of drama to the pinnacle where you just start killing people? It's like, ooh, wow, that's not a good diagnosis to have.
But
you don't want to be in relationships with people who have that diagnosis.
But yeah, basically she got fired from her job because everybody in the office was like fighting each other to see who got to have sex with Tiffany, essentially.
So yeah, see, borderline personality disorder. Wasn't about the sex, it was about the drama.
Which I've never been a part of, or even been like halfway like heard of that stuff, but like I see stories all the time of things like that happening. So
I've never been unfaithful to my wife my whole life, but I have worked in groups where stuff like that was going on with other people, and it is about that crazy. And if anyone looking at it from the outside is like, huh, you're all fucking up. Like, this is clearly like, this is how careers, this 15 years you've worked towards this, it's about to just literally blow away in the wind. It's like, yeah, but it's so hot. It's like, all right, dude, I guess if it's worth it. I mean, you know, it's like, it would also be fun to drive a car 150 miles an hour down the freeway, but if that goes wrong, it's over. That's it, you know. But yeah, no, I've seen these kind of group dynamics before. It's weird and uncomfortable and sad. It's never like, oh yeah, I can't wait for my turn. It's like, nope. That's on to the next work team. Let's solve this other problem over here.
The only guy, like, I don't even know like what happened, so I don't even know if it even sexually related. But there was a guy who was like a manager of the store, like the head manager. And then one day he was gone, and then I was at Best Buy, and he was like a low level employee working there. It's like, oh, what? This had to be a sex thing that happened here.
No, I've seen things where it's like, hey, we're all working together. It's groups. It's like we're solving industrial problems. We're you know, the whole point of this is a work team. We're actually doing work, but we're working on the problems. And it's like, oh, who's going to the bar after work? Okay, well, what's wrong with like 12 people going to the bar after work and, you know, talking? It's like, okay, I got to go home. But then you find out like, well, some people stayed. They went to an after hours thing. And then like 2 weeks later, everyone's moody at work. And it's like, oh, and somebody's wife was calling the plant. It's like, oh, this is nuts. Now your work life sucks and your home life sucks. Cool. You know, it's
nowhere to go. Time to self-destruct.
Yeah. Time to disappear into that bottle of pills.
Yeah, I guess because I don't drink and also usually end up working alone because I figure out how to overwork myself because I'm always trying to figure out. It's like, man, like how can I do this whole job by myself? Which is a bad attitude to have, especially in this economic economy, because they'll make sure you'll do every job by
Yeah,
yourself.
hey, this guy's basically saying he wants to be the nine. This guy wants to be like the Leatherman tool of labor. He wants to do like 15 things as long as it means he can be quiet. It's like, well, we can reward his inability to speak with others. But we're only going to pay him once, even though we wanted to do 9 things. Yeah.
I mean, that's usually like when I leave a job, it takes 4 people to replace me. So it's like, um, here, but yeah, in the middle of talking, Tiffany she gets really mad at Pat because she figures out that Pat thinks she's crazier than him, which is really like she's very offended by that. It's like, I'm not the one that went to a mental health facility. I'm not crazier than you. It's like, nah, you just haven't been yet, you know. And then she just knocks everything off the table and leaves.
Yeah.
Pat goes after her. They have a further argument. Here, Pat starts hearing the wedding song in his head. Actually, you're not sure at first. It's like you don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was coming through a speaker somewhere weird.
Yeah.
But then again, this is that thing in the movie where because then she starts doing what got her fired from her job. It's like, yeah, he's harassing me. He's like getting strange. She's getting strangers involved. And
Yeah.
like, get this guy away from me. He's a creep. And of course people show up like, hey, what you doing? I'm gonna help protect the pretty lady for reasons.
Yeah, we
and
got some white knight showing up.
Yep.
Doing some what do you call that? That virtue signaling. But then Officer Keogh shows up, and then this is where like Tiffany's like, oh, he's not doing anything that I'm saying he's doing. He's gonna get in real trouble if I don't intervene. So she immediately has sympathy for him and helps him calm down by telling him like the music's not playing, it's all in your head. And so the music does slowly disappear from the soundtrack. And then like even Officer Keogh calms down and he's like he looks at Tiffany, he's like, hey, you want to go out for drinks later?
Yeah. See, this is when I'm still deeply invested in the thing. It's like this is all some kind of hallucination. Like the one cop in all of Philadelphia shows up again just to deal with this guy specifically. It's like, oh, okay.
But then Pat walks her home. She says she'll still give the letter to Nikki, so this makes Pat happy. So this is a silver lining out of the very bad date that they have. It's like, well, at least my letter will get to Nikki. So he's like, hey, good ended on a good note, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Then we cut to Pat Senior's getting, he's like getting out of shape because he's missing an envelope.
Yeah, like a numbered envelope.
Yeah. Which is going around asking everybody else, like, hey, what happened to this envelope? Which it turns out it's like, oh, Pat took it. So it is true. He's not hallucinating.
Yeah, he's not being paranoid. It's like someone was in my office. They took envelope 547 or what,
But here, because Pat is happy because he's going to get a note to Nikki, he's suspicious about his son's happiness. It's like, oh, this can't be good. When you're happy, good things don't happen.
Yeah, whenever you're happy about the wrong things, you're about to break a restraining order and go back to the psych ward, aren't you? And your crazy girlfriend's going to help you. This is awesome. His dad has all the right impulses for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. That's the sad thing. Is like, he's actually right about all this stuff, but it's all based, it's because he's cynical and, life hasn't been good to him. But actually, life's been very good to him. Because if I lost my pension, I would have no chance to live a second life as a bookmaker because I'm terrible at math and I hate sports too. So it's like, what am I betting on? It's like, what's going to happen in the next Doctor Who episode? Who's got odds?
I did have like a kind of like fun naive moment because I forgot because earlier on when I said like, oh, now he's bookmaking, my imagination went literally to like, oh, he's like doing clever things with binding books with like gold.
He's an old bookbinder. There's candles burning and he's like got a press. He's using glue made from horse hooves. It's like, no.
No, he's just running bets on sports.
Yeah.
which now
He's
is
a-
perfectly fine.
He's just an Italian stereotype. Of course, Robert De Niro's a bookie named Patrizio. Why wouldn't he?
What's their last name? Like Salado or something like that.
Solitano.
Solitano. Okay.
Patrizio Solitano Sr. and Patrizio Solitano Jr.
Let's see. Oh yeah, this is a great scene. Pat shows up at Tiffany's house. She's not there, so he knocks on the doors, and the parents like open the door, and they are very unhappy with him being there, and it becomes a weird situation because apparently it's like guys keep showing up like waiting to have sex with Tiffany, and they're very mad about it because apparently this happens a lot. And then a guy just shows up like wanting to have sex with Tiffany.
Yeah.
And here the Pat tells the other guy about like, hey, Tiffany is in a bad state and she needs to heal. And he's being very honest here, which this is like Tiffany's in earshot of this, so she like kind of like she has like another 180 on Pat. It's like, oh, he is like doing kind of be trying to improve himself and help people.
Yeah, because she doesn't know he doesn't know she can hear him because she's
Yeah.
hiding behind the door.
Yeah.
And her mom and dad are just like, get the hell out of here, you weirdos and stuff.
But like when they kind of calm down a bit when he describes that like how like Tiffany needs to heal, but they're still like, hey, get out of here.
Yeah.
So Pat leaves, and the other guy. Well, it's funny because you don't know if like, oh, is this guy just showing up at random to try to have sex with Tiffany? But then he says like as they're like walking away, he's like, she texted me. So,
yeah, he's not just being some weird. I mean, he could just be like a normal guy.
Yeah.
Like or he could be like married to someone else and be a real creep, or he could just
also,
be some guy like, well, yeah, she texted.
Well, he's got glasses, look nerdy, he has like a trench coat or something, and then he's balding, so it's like, oh yeah, I can get with this really hot girl. It's like, of course he's really excited.
Yeah. He's like home run. I'm a slave to my penis.
That's why I'm
There's no
starting to
context
look like
in my life because of this penis. You know, I have to do what it says. It drove the car over here. It was wrapped around the wheel like an elephant trunk.
But I'm wondering if that was just like that was a guy from her office she worked at, or if it was just a random guy. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like she has problems with this kind of stuff. This is how it manifests.
Pat leaves, and then ends up being like Tiffany chases him down to tell her that she can't deliver the letter. He says he wants to help her, and so she wants him to be his dance partner for a dance competition, but he doesn't want to do it. Then we cut to Danny shows up at Pat's house. They're hanging out and watching the Eagles game. I forget what. There's something about like a mental hygiene thing that he cleared or whatever, so they let him out. Pat Senior sees Pat as a good luck charm, and thus he sees.
Pat's got the handkerchief.
Yeah,
he's rubbing it, or not Pat.
Pat Senior. Yeah, it's
Pat Senior. Well, no, he's giving it to Danny.
Well, Danny's holding the remotes.
Oh, I thought Danny had the cloth. Okay,
he might, but he has two remotes in his hand. The handkerchief could be somewhere else, but he's got the two remotes in his hand for reasons. Sierra. Ronnie gives Pat an iPod. Which at
I
this
haven't
time
seen those forever. It's like,
Yeah.
oh wow, those antique things. Wow.
Here he also unloads again on about his problems onto Pat, which is very funny because he's like talking about music. It's like, yeah, I got some West Side Story in there. It calms me down, but then sometimes I go into my garage and I listen to Metallica and Megadeth and I break things. And he's like, Ronnie, you have problems. But he's like, no, you see, like this is my therapy. Because I forget who this guy is, but he plays desperate very well.
Yeah.
And then Pat's brother Jake shows up. This is Shea Wiggum, who you
Yep.
probably seen in a bunch of things, but you probably don't recognize his name, but you've seen him in something.
True Detective, Fargo, Take Shelter, Boardwalk Empire. Yeah, I recognize him. He's a
Play,
great, like, he's like one of those like character actor guys that like he's always good whatever he does, but he's always a supporting guy.
yeah, he's always like one of the detectives or a cop, and he always has like a cut on his nose or something.
Yeah.
um, Here it's like a weird. They play it off as weird. It's like, oh, he's meeting his brother, and his brother's like mentioning all his successes that he's had because he's like, I'm guessing he's a lawyer because he's saying like he's, what do they call that? He's about to make partner or something or whatever at the
Yeah.
firm. So I'm assuming that's a lawyer thing. I don't know. And so like Jake thinks, Jake's just being honest with him, and he's trying to put this out here. And like his dad thinks he's trying to like make him jealous because it's like, well, obviously Pat's in a bad place.
Yeah.
He's in his mid-30s at his parents' house and has no job, and he just got out of a mental health facility. So, but he apparently he learned a phrase from Danny. He says, "I got nothing but love for your brother," which is very literal. And so then that breaks the tension. So then they get to go watch the Eagles game. Which is I think they've mentioned this before, but because in the book they go to the Eagles games all the time, but the dad can't go, both here and in the book, because Pat Senior got in a fight and he's been banned from the stadium for essentially for life.
Yeah.
In the book, there's also another thing about where it's like Danny or Pat was in the mental health facility for like 3 years, and so that like it was a shock to him because they had moved stadiums. But even though they moved stadiums, I guess the ban still holds. You're not allowed in the stadium.
Yeah.
Take
it from someone who's been to a few professional football games with his son. People love to fight. I mean, beat each other bloody, and everyone else just kind of like, oh, excuse me, we're just walking around here. Like, wow, this is crazy. You spent like $500 to get the shit beat out of you. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Okay, cool. Have fun. You didn't even know who these people were, and you're fighting with them.
And then they go home. It's like best time of my life, or they don't
Yeah.
remember it at all.
Well, they've got a missing front tooth, their nose is broken. And like I said, these people are and one thing I've noticed is like, I was getting like the $5 thing of water. It's like these people are drinking beer like constantly. Like, they're just like this the whole time. And then by the end of the game, when the Colts lose or the Patriots or whatever, it's like, well, they don't seat people those games because we were buying tickets from a season ticket holder who wasn't able to go to that one. So you just got random people set in different places. But we were all like Patriots fans in the Colts zone. And I told Grayson, and he says like, yeah, keep your jacket on, because he had a Patriots jersey. We're not doing this. And he's like, well, I don't know, what could happen. I said, oh, people get drunk and beat the shit out of each other. And we saw that at the end of the game. It's like, here we see is what I told you.
And that's even worse in Britain for soccer games.
Yeah, I mean, we're in Indianapolis. Like, it's not like this is like, yeah, we're seeing the Patriots in like Indianapolis. We're not seeing the Patriots like in.
But I don't know any famous like people got murdered after a game. I'm sure it's happened in America, but that's like all the time, all over the world for soccer games.
Oh yeah, no, we don't have that kind of. We have like, I'm going to drink a lot of beer and throw a few ill-timed punches and maybe get hurt more falling in the stadium than actually from fighting. No, in England, it's like, well, we got a bunch of bricks stashed outside the stadium. We're just going to start throwing them at each other, like that kind of shit.
I have to find this. I remember there was some crazy one where like everything was unbelievable. Apparently, it all happened. Like some Argentinian soccer game where at the end of it, like 76 people were murdered.
Someone got decapitated at one of
Yeah.
those. Like one of the referees, they like just pulled his head off his body. It's
Yeah,
like,
the crowd just pulled his.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 8 people grabbed his head and pulled, and the other people grabbed his body and pulled.
it was like, well, this is like something from Game of Thrones. Like, what is this? Yeah, we don't have that here yet. Give it time. It'll be here.
An officer here.
I think with soccer though, it's like, number one, it's all they got, and it's on like a 4-year cycle. Like
Yeah.
here, it's like, oh, we didn't make the playoffs or we didn't make the bowl. It's like, we'll try again next year. Not, oh no, we're going to be waiting half a decade for a result. So yeah, might as well decapitate the refs, you know.
I'd recommend if you haven't seen it. Well, I guess you can't. It's on Hulu. It's called Welcome to. Well, no, I guess it's on FX. I guess you watch. It's called Welcome to Wrexham, and it'll give you. It's a really interesting look into like how soccer works abroad, or at least in Britain how it works, but it's broadly how it works all over the world.
Yeah.
But they have like the relegation system, which is like amazing. Of like, oh, if you're the last place team, so it'd be like if the Yankees came in last place in the league, they'd be demoted to the minor league, like the entire organization. And then like
if they did that in football, we wouldn't have the Detroit Lions.
No.
It'd just be gone. It'd just be like a farm team for Chicago or something.
So there is like a really interesting desperation to like winning and losing there, where it's like, no, this could be the end of the team.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I could see again. Okay. I didn't understand that. The stakes are higher.
But also also in American sports usually only have like 2 levels of sports. I mean, you get your little league stuff, and then you got your college sports, and then you have minor league stuff, which isn't always present in every sport, and then you have like the major leagues. Like baseball has like, you know, you got like you have minor leagues, AAA, AA, and stuff like that. That's kind of the most comprehensive like sports system in America. But like football, like college is the minor leagues.
Yep. And sometimes the people you see in college one year, they'll be starting on a pro team the next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, basketball has a bit more diversions, especially like internationally, where it's like the minor league scene is just the international scene. It's like, well, internationally, here's our major sport, and then you can be a star there, and then maybe you'll get drafted to an NBA team. And it's even more like because like baseball has grown like more internationally, and so like we got like, you know, one of the best players currently is from Japan, which you wouldn't necessarily see as like, oh, that's where even though they have great players there, they weren't like, only a few would come over, and it's like now they're the best players in baseball. The same thing with basketball too. So
yeah.
Like most sports in America, it's like you might have a minor league team, but that it's like it's just professional or not. But football is more severe, where it's like even practicing it can become an injury. So that's whereas like most other sports, like you can, I don't know how hockey does it. Hockey seems like you get injured in so many different ways.
Yeah, I don't. That is the worst of the sports. Just when I imagine ways of getting hurt, like hockey seems like, oh, you're just artificially speeding across ice. It's like, yeah, you can't just like stop. You know, you're just gonna smash into somebody. Yeah, and some people are smashing into you deliberately, like, oh, sorry. You know, it's like, wow.
And the ball in play is it can hurt you physically, because everything else, it's like, well, I mean, I guess baseball too, but like everything else is like, well, it's just a ball with air in it. It's like if it hits you right in the nose, it can break your nose, but it's not going to knock your teeth out usually.
Yeah, if you take a puck to the throat at full velocity, it's like, you're just gonna die. Or not be able to feel your arms and legs ever again. Yeah. It's like a puck's like dangerous.
Officer Keogh shows up to take Danny away because apparently his mention about like he had a misinterpretation of a mental hygiene law, and I guess they reversed it. And it's like, you got to go back to the mental health facility. Which is this is kind of funny, because it's done. And also Pat Senior's like, well, he's a good luck charm. The Eagles are playing. Like, you're an Eagles fan, right? Let him sit here till the game's over. He's like, yeah, I'm a cop. He's an escaped like mental patient. Like, no. Then we cut to Pat shows up at Tiffany's dance studio, which is like, it's built out of a renovated garage, and she has a room above it. Pat doesn't want to dance, so then the thing she just makes him do is just to walk across the room. And then she tells a story of how Tommy died, which he was hit by a car helping a guy with a flat tire on the side of the road. It's definitely one of my nightmares.
Yeah. Because that's
uh,
actually something I've done. Like I've
yeah.
stopped and helped people. Like you don't think you're going to get hit. I mean, I've had to change a driver's side tire on a freeway before. And when I think about when I had to do that, I was like, I'm so lucky I'm not dead. Because like the tire like blew off the rim. Like I had to stop quickly. So I wasn't able to like safely get as far over as
Yeah.
possible. It's like, no, my ass was on the freeway while the cars because that's I just had to sit down because you're way down on the ground then once you've blown it off the rim. And it's like, yeah. Yeah, when I heard that, I was like, yep, that can happen, definitely.
Which I think my worst nightmare, which is completely concocted by my imagination. But have you ever had to go over like a bridge at night and it doesn't have any lights on it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I just imagine one of the spans is missing.
Yeah. You're just like you won't know until you just feel gravity. It's like I want to get home and get my pizza in the oven. Ah! You're not going to know what the hell's happening. You're going to smash into water
Yeah.
at velocity, and it's like, well, this I might just break my back and drown. Like I can't get out of the car now.
See, you know how to complete the nightmare.
Yeah, I can just start writing. Like all the 10 bad things are going to happen.
In the book, it's different. It's supposed to be like his death is sort of ironic because I think he was a teacher. He started some like drunk driving campaign and then he was killed by a drunk driver.
Okay, well, yeah, that was weird and ironically sad.
Um, which I guess the irony was what really screws her up and what, you know, but here it's just like something kind of, oh yeah, I could see that happening.
Well,
Uh,
because he went to Victoria's Secret.
yeah, because they hadn't had sex for like a month or something like that, or like half a year or something like that.
And the reason they hadn't is because he wanted kids and she didn't.
Yeah,
And so she like suddenly like the idea of sex just like dissolved out of their marriage. So he was trying to get some, hot lingerie to spice things up because he really loved her,
yeah,
and then he just died. And she's like, writes all kinds of blame onto herself for like, well, he died because of me and that.
yeah.
And so then that becomes sex, becomes like, I'm just going to do this constantly and obsessively now because it's how I deal with the guilt. And it's like, yeah, it's weird and sad and probably believable too.
Um, and then we get "Girl from the North Country Plays," which is like a Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash song, which
Yep.
I think this is the only time I've heard it. I don't know. Do you have any history with that song?
No, I just know of it. I know that it was a collab they did.
Okay.
It was kind of interesting at the time.
They basically they're practicing dancing by conveying emotion. So they're like not even dancing. It's just like, no, we just need to convey emotion,
Yep.
which is interesting.
Yeah, they're not doing like, okay, foot 1, 2, 3. They're not doing anything like that. They're just staring deeply into each other's eyes.
And listening to music.
Yep.
And then we have a montage of Tiffany and Pat training for a dance routine. Here's where you kind of see where Pat's like kind of distancing himself from, like his workouts are the dance routine, so he's working out less, and he also has less time to read the book. So he's like, he's devoting his more of his time to this. And this
This is where the character starts to take a turn from like his obsessive, like hopeless thing to like the woman right in front of him who obviously likes him a lot, despite everything, despite the fact that like he has no future and doesn't offer her anything except more confused anger and sadness that she's already living with. But for some reason, she likes this guy. So.
Yeah. Which is, this is like the selfish side of me like comes in. It's like, man, I wish I had all that free time and a hot girl coming after me.
The girl from the Hunger Games would date me.
Then we get away from the montage. We're at the dance studio. Pat has like books and newspapers because his dad's giving a newspaper because he wants him to keep up with the Eagles, and then he has books from like his Nikki syllabus, and then Tiffany doesn't want him looking at those things. It's just a distraction. I forget. She has a whole speech about why she hates Lord of the Flies, but I can't remember what it is. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, because it's like she explains, like she gives a rough synopsis of like, oh well, there's a conch shell and you can't speak unless you have it, and they work out some system that just really justifies cruelty, because the reality is the world sucks and people are cruel. And this just kind of makes like a ritual out of it. Or she has some, yeah, there's a lot, she has to give a lot of speeches like this in the movie, of these very like elaborate thought out things that like, oh yeah, it makes sense. It's like because she's good at like brutally simplifying everything, because she's just a bullshit filter,
Yeah.
where she's like, yeah, you can make it as high minded as you want to, but in the end, this is why your logic is wrong. Your thinking is wrong because of this, that, and the other. And life sucks and it's just cruel. And, you know,
But it's similar to along the lines of what Pat thinks. So he's just kind of like, oh, cool. I think the same things. I mean,
yeah, they
more,
don't disagree. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, his thing is like, if you have all this struggle, there has to be a happy ending.
Yeah.
Because like I'm struggling, there's got to be a reason for it. I can't be just struggle and then everything goes to shit and I die. That can't be the ending.
Yeah. Yeah. So people get into religion and stuff too. And she's like, no, the struggle's right here. Cause yeah, her throwing that stuff outside, and it's like, no, stop pining after this woman who betrayed you and obviously doesn't want anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Because I want, you know, I'm putting the work in here. She's doing all the work throughout this whole movie.
Yeah.
This woman should have huge shoulders for all the people she's carrying on her back. For more than one reason, you know, that's still.
I even like the secret work that gets put in, which I know is kind of unrealistic for the character, but maybe she also doesn't have a job, so she has all this free time. So
yeah,
there's a scene later on where it's like she suddenly knows things that nobody thinks she should know, but it's like, oh, I guess, yeah, because she has all this time, she can just
she can. She's running a long-term operation on Patrizio. She likes this guy, and she's going to know everything about him and his life. And because she's smart and she has nothing. We don't know what she actually does for a living, but she's
she used to work at the office, but now she doesn't have a job anymore. So.
Well, yeah, but we don't know what she did at said office. That's the thing.
Yeah.
She's obviously like intelligent, and I think she's living off of some settlement from her husband's death.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's when like mental illness can really flourish in your life, when you just have nothing but time and money. It's like, well, anything's possible. You usually do the worst possible thing.
I'll have my duck hat now, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, with the flappy wings and the
What's your new hobby? Live taxidermy. It's like, what does that mean? It's like, it's the freshest taxidermy you can imagine.
I just need the screams to cover up my screams in my head.
Yeah.
Danny shows up at the dance studio saying that this time one of his therapists had their license revoked, and so that like null and voids everything, and he gets let out. Which this is funny because this is like, oh, this one obviously has to be wrong, and he's going to be taken away again. But apparently this one's true.
Yeah. He's played all the angles, and finally he paid off. It's you know, he bet that long shot enough times that it happened.
They dance in front of Danny, which he tries to give them constructive criticism. And then so like Danny starts dancing with Tiffany, which just makes Pat jealous. He's like, all right, I got it. There's also a funny thing.
Yeah, and Danny's also like telling her like, oh yeah, pop your bottom, you know, pop it out. Yeah, you got to work it, you know.
You got to work that.
I think not because Danny's like, I think Danny's just trying to make Patrizio see it's like, yeah, this chick really likes you, and she's also like really hot. Yeah. So I think Danny's trying to be like a really good friend.
Yeah,
not just a lech.
Also, it's funny here because also here where Danny's like, no, you need to black it up, Pat. He's like, what does that mean? That's racist. And he's like, you know what I mean? It's like this unspoken thing. It's like, yeah, I know what you mean, but I'm not gonna put words to it.
Yeah, it's one of those awkward moments. Like, very good. All right, everyone proceed.
Wow. Yeah, I think he says like, how am I supposed to respond to that? It's like, you're not.
Yeah, just stick her ass out. Yeah, there we go. You know, that's how you respond.
Which I'm guessing here it just mean like, hey Pat, when I say you need to black it up, just kind of put more hip into it, like put it about a little bit more.
Yeah.
do a little shoulder movement. You just, the white people dancing is very shoulder and head heavy. You need to go below that.
Yeah. Lots of pelvic thrusting.
Yeah, remember all the things Elvis stole from black people? That's what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah,
um, let's see. Let me cut to This is sometimes. Well, now that like now, well, apparently, like in the book, Pat is running like 10 to 12 miles a day, but they don't get into that here. But here it seems like the dance routines is making it. Well, I guess he's also running on top of that. But here he's so exhausted from the day that he's like sleeping like in the afternoon. And so his dad comes in and wakes him up. And his dad is trying to explain to Pat like what the importance of the Eagles beating the Giants are. And this is like a super emotional scene that's like, oh, this isn't about the Eagles beating the Giants. This is about him regretting how he raised his son.
yeah,
But none of that is said. I mean, well, it's kind of said, but you know. This weirds Pat out, obviously. It's like his dad's waking him up to be very emotional and cry in front of him. It's like, Dad, this isn't normal. It's like, oh, great, the mental health patient's telling me that. But yeah, but here Pat Senior's trying to guess that like maybe he spent too much time with his brother, and he's like here he's like crying. He's basically saying he wants to make up for lost time, which is also interesting. It's like, wait, did you name your youngest son after yourself so you didn't have to raise him? You thought he would just become you automatically?
yeah. Like, you don't really have an identity outside of me, so I don't.
I don't know. Did you have any? Did you have something about the scene you wanted to talk about, or you just thought this was a really good scene for Robert De Niro?
Yeah, this was where Robert De Niro is like, oh, you can. This is why you bring a AAA list actor into a movie, and it's like because he's gonna. I mean, because all the acting in this movie is amazing, but yeah, Robert De Niro really sells it here because it's not a typical, like, you know, Robert De Niro has been emotional in other movies, but sometimes it's always like after a lot of head kicking and violence or whatever. It's like, oh no, this movie, this is just a father like kind of at the end of his rope,
Yeah.
and he's like, I'm so depressed, and it's like I think you're fucked up because I screwed your life up somehow, and you know, and I was kind of selfish, and I just really couldn't. I just focused so much on your brother, like didn't give you enough, and this is why this happened. Because his dad doesn't understand mental illness or anything. It's like, oh, he's just kind of screwed up, you know, and he's like taking it all into himself. It's like, yeah, he's got this mental illness because I was a bad father and I neglected him, and so we're gonna like relate to each other through sports and gambling because that's all I understand about the world. It sounds like simplifying and stupid, but it's also like super sad because yeah, that is all he understands about how the world
Yeah.
works. There is no like, let's look deep into ourselves and think about no. No, people don't do that, especially guys like that from that era. They don't do that. So
But yeah, Pat Senior uses this as an excuse to like believe in his son and say he's gonna put all his money on the Giants game, and that's the way he believes in Pat, and he wants Pat to go to the Eagles game with his brother, and also like the restaurants on the line because he's going all in on this bet.
yeah,
um, but Pat says like this conflicts with the dance routine, so he doesn't agree to it. Here, and then we cut to Pat asks Tiffany for like a half day because he wants to go to the Eagles game. She says no because they have to work on the big move. Here, Tiffany holds apparently like she got a response letter from Nikki, so he's holding that over his head. So they're trying to practice the big move, and they just keep falling over each other a bunch. It looks more like they're practicing like pro wrestling rather than doing a lift move.
yeah.
Like, oh, she did a head scissors takedown. I was like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's the one thing I do like about the dancing in this movie is it's like, oh yeah, this isn't what was the movie? The one everyone loves with like Roadhouse. Like, no, this didn't turn out to be like that at all. It's,
Hey, Roadhouse.
or no, yeah, what was the one with the? He was like the dancing instructor or whatever. No, that's the one where he was
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. Yeah, Roadhouse. Jesus. Yeah, Dirty Dancing. Like everyone's like, oh, is this gonna be like Dirty Dancing? It's like,
I thought you were
no,
gonna say like Saturday Night Fever or something, a movie I've never
No.
seen, but I hear is like action. Because I assume that's just a stupid dancing movie, but I guess it has like way more it goes deeper than that.
Yeah, it's a lot of like social like anxiety and satire.
And I guess it was written by a guy with bipolar disorder, and I guess he wrote a lot of interesting screenplays because every day was new to him.
Yeah. He was good at
um,
emotion. This is why AI will never write good scripts because it doesn't have like self-loathing and mental illness to draw from. All it has is the mistakes of the past.
although I did I did find a hilarious AI thing just because of how wrong it is. um, I don't yeah, I guess I got to take the opportunity to do this. No, where's it at? Oh man, I don't remember where it is. I apologize. No, I'll just have to find it later.
Okay.
It's an AI writing a scene about Trump.
Oh, okay.
And it has something to do with Arby's. That makes no sense. It's like, yeah.
It actually does make sense because of just the weird randomness around that guy. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the AI crammed all this together. It was like, well, this is America, so of course Arby's and meat, and then Donald Trump.
Yeah.
um, let's see here. Pat asked to read the letter because it's throwing him off, and so he reads it. I like he says like he's like, all right, I'm gonna read this out loud in case I get emotional. And then he starts reading it without saying it out loud. And she's like, I thought you said you're gonna read it out loud. It's like, oh yeah, right. So he's reading the letter and he gets emotional. He has to leave. Then we cut to the next day. It's the Eagles game. They're playing the Giants. Pat Sr. drives Pat to the game, but Pat Sr. can't go in because he's banned from the stadium for fighting. Pat hangs out with his brother and his friends, like his frat friends or something like that. Then the Asian invasion shows up, which is a bunch of Indian Eagles fans.
Yeah.
Which Cliff is one of them, and he has like half his face painted green because he's a big Eagles fan. And so everyone bonds over the Eagles. In the book, there's just like somebody's an Eagles fan and they have a friend who's a Giants fan, and that's what spurs on the fight. Here it's more interesting where it's like they just have a racist Eagles fan, which there have to be plenty of them.
I'm sure, yeah.
And they just fight.
I mean, I've seen Parking Wars, so I know how people
Yeah.
feel about each other in that city.
So the racist Eagles fans start fighting the Indian fans, and then Pat doesn't want to get in the fight. He's like literally saying out loud like the things he doesn't want to do. But when they hit his brother, that's when he starts attacking the guy who hit his brother. And then the cops show up and like take them all away. Which I don't know if they went to jail or if they just like put them somewhere for a while and that just delayed things or something. But like the Eagles lose, and so they get home, and like Pat Senior's like losing it over the Eagles losing. But also like Cliff's there is like he was just defending his brother, like he didn't do anything wrong. It's like no, you went crazy and everything went wrong because your mental illness and all that stuff. And then Tiffany shows up to get mad at Pat. But then Pat Senior is mad with her, and this is the first time they're meeting. And then he's saying like all the things that she did wrong to make the Eagles lose, and then she counters all of his superstitions because she like knows all, or she bothered to learn all of Philadelphia sports and all these things going on, and how like every time that they were together, some Philadelphia sports team won an event.
Yeah.
And then after she's done with her rant, he's like, you know what? She's right.
Yeah, he doesn't even like come back at her like for all the information this guy has about sports. He's like, yeah, I can't really argue with this. It all makes sense. Everything she said is right, which is hilarious.
Yeah. It's a very good scene. It lasts a lot longer than what I'm saying here. She's also
Like I said, this was like for the amount of dialogue that Jennifer Lawrence has to deliver in this movie around complex mercurial subjects that she just seems to know in and out. It's like it's amazing.
Yeah. Then there's a whole setup here between Pat Senior and Randy, who's like, I don't know if he's like his friend or neighbor or something. Here he's wearing a Giants jersey, but they say he's what fan do they say he is?
Cowboys. It's
Yeah, he's a
America's
Cowboys
team.
fan. Yeah. Well, you don't like America, Randy? Which I don't know who this guy is. He doesn't seem like a professional actor, but he does seem like one of those guys that he's playing.
Yeah. Yeah, he's regional talent. I don't know who he is, but yeah, he seems like one of these guys. He's also like a poison friend, essentially.
Yeah,
That's what Tiffany says. He's like, "Oh, you love this.
yeah.
You love it when your friend loses. That's you feed off that energy, you know." And that's basically what she does with sex. So she knows it. She sees
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you're another vampire. You're just not a sex vampire. You're a sports vampire."
um, but so they make up. Well, he makes a first bet where he's like, "I'll give you 10 points on the Giants Cowboys game." It's like,
Yeah, double or nothing, which is like you've already lost all your money to this guy. It's like, okay.
He's like, "You'd be crazy not to take that bet," and everyone's like, "Don't do this, Pat."
Yeah.
Pat Senior, and then he doubles it. It was like, "What's that dance routine? Like, what's going on there?" And they make a parlay bet, which I'm glad they explained it because I don't know anything about betting. Like Cliff is like, "Hey, I don't know about parlays. Why don't you explain that to me?" And there's like, "Well, he has to win 2 bets or he doesn't win any of them."
Yeah, because it basically you could do like a point spread bet, which he would have lost as the game turns out. So yeah, like
Oh
Tiffany.
no, he would have won that. He gave him a point spread of 10 points, and then they beat him like 44-6.
Oh, I thought they beat him by too many points, and he would have like blown the spread.
No,
I
it's
thought
like
he. Oh,
no
okay.
point
I
spread.
misunderstood.
So I think a
I
pop.
thought winning with the dance was like the only way that like it
No, it's
like
like I believe how it works is like he's giving the Cowboys 10 points. So whatever they score, you add 10 points to it, and the Eagles would have to go over that score to win the bet. I believe
oh
that's how it works. I think that's
oh
how a
okay.
point spread works.
I thought point spread was just a parabola you had to operate within, even if your team like, oh, if your team goes over that amount, then they also lose. It's like a 50-50 thing. I could
Oh,
be wrong. I'm not
that's
much
it.
of a
I
sports.
forget. That's a yeah. That is a kind of type of bet, but I can't remember what that is. But no, as far as I know, what spread is like because otherwise, because you can't make the bet 50-50 because then the house doesn't win. They don't have an advantage. So they have a point spread where it's like, well, we're giving a lesser team points to make it more even. So there's no way you can just 50-50 the bet.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like, oh, it's the Patriots versus the Lions. Well, obviously the Patriots are going to win. And it's like, okay, well, I bet on the Patriots. It's like, well, now the Lions are given 15 points. Like, are the Patriots that good that they're gonna beat this team by 15 points? So that's what
Oh, okay.
I believe that's how betting works.
Yeah, I that's not how much I bought a couple lottery tickets in my life. So that's
Yeah,
about
I
I've
don't know.
never won. So
The most I know about betting is from the Artie Lang book, and I didn't understand it then. I just know some terms. Like there's
it
something
worked
called
out really well for him. So
yeah,
yeah.
there's something called a vig, which I don't know what that is.
I always thought VIG was the interest the loan shark charged you.
Okay, yeah, that might be it. Yeah.
Which I mean, you could have VIG in sports betting if you're borrowing the money from a loan shark to bet, which is like double jeopardy. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, there's funny here because like now they make a bet on the dance routine that Pat and Tiffany are gonna do, and they're like, "How's the scoring work there?" And it's like it's a 1 to 10 system, and it's like, well, where do you guys rate? Like amongst the other dancers, and Pat's like, "We're terrible," and she's like, "We're okay."
Yeah, yeah. There's kind of a sober assessment there for a second. Like, you think we might win the dance routine, like in most goofball movies, where it's like they win the battle of the bands, and it's like, now we probably won't. And we're not just being modest; it's actually, like you said, it looks more like a pro wrestling routine.
So then he gives them like, okay, well, like what's an average score? It's like 5. It's like, okay, if you get a 5, then Pat Senior wins the bet. Any below that, then Randy wins the bet.
Yeah.
Which this really upsets Pat because he doesn't want all this like pressure put on him that like, well, now if we don't get that, now then everything falls apart and it's all my fault and there's no silver lining because everything is my fault. So yeah, he leaves. Tiffany tells like the parents that like they need to lie to Pat to tell him that like Nikki's gonna be there, so like he'll go to the dance. And then outside, Pat is reading Nikki's letter, and then he realizes that like he recognizes a phrase that Tiffany said, and he sees that in the letter, and here he realizes, oh, Nikki didn't write the note, Tiffany did, which he gets really kind of mad, but then holds back like pretty well. And then we cut to Pat going for a run at night. So that'd been the end of Act 2. So we have Act 3. It's Christmas time. Tiffany is trying to choose a tie out for Pat, but she's not satisfied with anything. They're preparing for the dance. Pat talks like Nikki's going to be there, even though he knows that she isn't. But she's just trying to like make Tiffany feel guilty for lying to him.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know that he knows. We cut the dance competition, and we see like the family. The family is there, and they see all the other competition. They're like, "Oh, these people are professionals."
Yeah, it looks like the people on Dancing with the Stars who train the stars have now all showed up. It's like, we have no chance. It's like, and these people are all Latin and they're hot. It's like, we're done.
We got sequin, see-through dresses, and all this stuff.
Yeah. They speak with accents. Like, we can't beat the accent people.
Pat and Tiffany end up like accidentally holding hands, which is kind of a funny scene. It's like, are you doing this? It's like, I thought you were doing this. It's like, oh well. And then it turns out Nikki is actually at the dance competition.
So's Officer Kehoe.
Oh, he is? I think I missed that.
Yeah, because it's like a policeman's like ball.
Oh, okay.
It's in the fine print on the banner.
Okay.
I had to watch like a retrospective review on this movie afterwards to pick up all this stuff. So,
we see Nikki from Tiffany's point of view, which this infuriates Tiffany, and this is apparently a setup from Veronica because she feels sorry for Pat and trying to give him a chance to like win his wife back.
Yeah.
she doesn't know, which Veronica has no idea how many plans this is upsetting at the moment.
Yeah, Veronica again is like, of course I'm the smart sister. I'm doing everything right. And it's like, no, you're just pissing everyone off. But you don't see that because you're a narcissist.
Tiffany goes for a drink, so this is like, oh, she's falling apart just before the dance, and a guy at the bar is hitting on her and buying her drinks. Then we cut to Pat spots Tiffany, and he's like distraught by this. I don't know if he doesn't just immediately approach her, but I don't know if he's also trying to think like, is this a delusion? Is she actually here? If she is here, what does that mean? So he's kind of angry about the whole situation, even though this is supposed to be a great moment for him.
Yeah.
Then we cut to we see like they're watching like a TV or a radio or something. They learn that the Eagles win the game, and so they beat the spread because it was like 44-6. Pat's looking for Tiffany, and he intercepts Tiffany and so he's like relating to how serious the situation is now. It's like, we have to do this, and you don't know if that means like we have to win the bet for Dad, or he has to win Nikki, or they have to like declare love for each other on the dance floor. It's all these things. And so we cut to like, it's kind of a moment like he's like, all right, we need to go, and then they go to the dance floor. It's like, oh wait, I thought there was some preamble. It's like, nope, it's their turn now.
Yep.
She just had.
There's not going to be any speech or anything. You think there will be, but there won't. You've got to assume she, like, this 100-pound woman's probably halfway to hammered at this point because she's been power drinking at the bar.
Yeah.
So
I think she said she only had 2 vodkas. I don't know if it's a vodka tonic or just straight vodka and ice. I don't know.
Yeah, but still, like, she's just this little tiny woman. So
yeah.
I don't know. Actually, I don't know how big she is, but I'm assuming she's like halfway to hammered.
I mean, it's Hollywood, so yeah. So they get out on the dance floor. The music jumps around in genres. It's like pretty heavily, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like you get a part where they start playing like, oh, what is it? Was that the Monkees, where it's like, I'm in love with a girl or something like that, and they start doing like kind of like, just like doing like crazy, like out of control dancing and stuff like that. It's kind of fun. And then they kind of get back to more serious stuff, and then they screw up the big lift where she kind of just awkwardly like sits on his head, and she lets.
Yeah, it's like just crotch to the face, and they're like trying to Like, oh no, here, just do it this way.
And,
Okay.
they show the judges kind of like, oh, like writing something bad down, and everyone's kind of like, oh no. But they just kind of let it go. They don't lose it or anything like that, or just abandon the routine. They just kind of like get back to what they were supposed to do, how they're supposed to end it. So
The show must go on.
even the judges like apologize, like, I'm sorry that happened, and they start doing the scores, and it's like 4-8, 4-9, and then like something like another 4-8, and then the last judge gives them like a 5-4, and then that averages exactly to a 5. And then like this, like, and then everybody in the family, and then even Tiffany and Pat are ecstatic and just
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, just screaming, and then all the judges like, we gave them a 4. They got 4s. I'm
They,
sorry.
they basically got 50% on the test. And these people are like, we're just burning this place to the ground. We're so excited. We're just gonna go flip a car over in the parking lot.
So yeah, Randy loses the bet, and presumably Pat Senior is going to get the restaurant now.
Yeah, so he can like hide his illegal gambling proceeds and dodge taxes. It's like, yeah, it's the American dream.
Tiffany and Pat hug. It's a bit more intimate, but he kind of breaks off to go talk with Nikki, which we never hear them talk to each other. It's all kind of like Tiffany's perspective at this point.
Yeah, he's like close to her, whispering in her ear, intimate, like totally breaking. Just walked right through that restraining order at the policeman's ball.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's great.
He's like the guy who talks about restraining orders. And what was the other? Oh, what was the famous movie Casino?
Oh,
remember the Joe Pesci character? It's like, I'm going to knock your fucking teeth out, and then you're going to get a restraining order against me, and I'm going to walk right through that and break your arms because I'm stupid. I thought he was whispering that into her ear. I don't know. I could be wrong.
And I actually hear what he says there, because he comes up and he basically declares all his improvements of like physically and mentally. I think she says, "Oh, you lost a lot of weight," but that's kind of all we get. But then the rest of it we don't hear. And then we see him.
That's when I assume he's talking like Joe Pesci, because that's what I want to believe.
And then we see him, Pat, and Nikki hug, and this is when Tiffany runs off.
No.
And then Pat leaves Nikki, and now he's out looking for Tiffany. And Pat Senior tells him to like, kind of like, very seriously, like, hey, there's no way you're gonna get lucky twice in this world. Nikki doesn't love you anymore. You know it. So you have to go after Tiffany. Which we don't know what happened with. We don't hear what Nikki says, but like, at the end of the movie, it's like, oh yeah, he was thinking that anyways. He doesn't need this pep talk, but it's just good for him to hear that.
It's like, Dad actually said something useful to me that didn't involve a sports gambling. It's like, my dad is not Bodog anymore. He's like a real human being, or DraftKings, or whatever the latest, thing. I don't know. Whoever's not sponsoring us. I would be ironic if we got a sponsorship from a sports betting thing, considering I know nothing about sports. Like, hey guys, you got like $500 laying around that
we're the perfect to sell it, because we don't know how destructive it is. Or
gambling on sports is great. I do it all the time. Tell a story about how you and a friend, we were betting on like Star Trek and something. Like, was Spock gonna hold up his hand?
Oh man, they make those bets. That stuff exists, man.
Oh yeah, it does. It does.
I don't know if that's like deep Las Vegas stuff, or you do that anywhere. Because they have,
I mean, if I found out about that and like, oh, you could bet in this universe, I would probably be in trouble. I know that. If they had like Dune gambling, like, oh, how much do you know about the lore and history of Lord of the Rings or Dunes? It's like, oh, I'd lose my life savings thinking I knew everything.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I feel very comfortable here.
Well, I mean, the great thing is like they even sponsor it, but like WWE, AEW does this too. Like, they're sponsored by DraftKings, and you can bet on their matches.
Awesome.
Which it has to be. It's like, well, these things are predetermined. So does betting influence any of these matches, the outcomes of these matches?
Now that's something I'd like to bet on, because it seems like this is an easy bet.
But also, that's the odds thing where it's like, oh, there's this, because in WWE they'll always have matches where like, oh, like this win happened unexpectedly, and there's really no story reason to it. It's just something unexpected to happen. So there is that stuff that happens, but like they have this longtime champion right now in Roman Reigns, and so basically like every match that happens, he's gonna win it somehow. But like the way they have the odds, it's like okay, this is 100-1 odds. So it's like, okay, if you bet on Roman Reigns, you're going to make nothing. But if the other guy wins, you're going to make a lot. But like, they're basically guaranteeing you betting on the guy that's almost 100% that's going to win is like will give you almost no money in return.
Yeah. Yeah, you've always got to go for the long shot then.
Yeah.
And then you can hang around like the edges. It's like the guy's betting on horses. Like, oh, I heard the horse like hurt his ankle. It's like, oh, I'm going for the long shot. Then you find out it's like shit. It's like, oh, the jockey's hung over. It's like, why? It's like, well, because he's 5 feet tall and he diets all the time. He's a drunk. It's like, oh yeah, okay.
But that's again like there's further things about betting that I don't know because like my limited understanding, I would just assume is like, oh, you're just betting on the horse is going to win. That doesn't seem too complicated. But it's like, no, you can bet on the horse you think that's going to come in fifth.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that is more complicated.
Yeah, they gotta spice it. If it's just a one-dimensional bet, it's like who's going to win? It's like, oh, the devil's shoestring or whatever. He's won all the other ones. It's like we're only betting against him if we think he's going to break his ankle and be shot after the race, which adds another element of darkness to it that we all enjoy.
So yeah,
the winner gets to shoot him. It's like, yay!
How many bullets it take to put him down?
We pull the jockey's head off too. Oh, God.
Tiffany's walking the streets, very emotional and distraught, and Pat goes running after her, and then she starts running away from him because this kind of
in a ball gown with like high-heeled shoes or whatever, or no dancing shoes. It's like you can't run really fast in those, but
on Philadelphia streets, that's got to be a challenge to navigate.
Yeah, just walk down these cobblestone streets in December with dancing shoes. Have fun.
Don't run down Ankle Snap Road.
What's this called? What's this street called? The Hobbler. Like, great.
But this kind of mimics like their running encounters earlier in the movie.
Yeah, and it's also the classic. Like this is like we're into completely classically composed romantic comedy type territory where it's like the guy's running after the girl. It's like, okay, seen this cliche 1,000 times, but what makes this work is the backstory to this is so bizarre and sad and happy all at the same time. It's like, oh, I hope he catches up with her because I want to know what he says.
Yeah,
and I like what he says. It's like, oh, this is cool.
He hands her a letter. I forget before like they go into routine. He talks about he has a letter for Nikki. I think he says he has a letter to Nikki.
Yes, his response letter.
Okay. And so he hands her the letter and he tells
needs you to help me walk through this restraining order one more time.
She reads it aloud, and then like while she's reading it, he just finishes the letter out loud from memory. And basically he lets her know here that he knows that she lied about giving the letter to Nikki, but also like inside the letter he declares her love for her. And then they kiss, and so it's a great moment. It's like, okay, so
it's cool.
They technically lost the dance routine, but won it through a minor victory through illegal sports betting in Philadelphia.
And they helped her, like, I helped my dad foment a criminal enterprise in which he bought a restaurant and he's going to run it now and continue his criminal enterprise. It's like, we're all Italians here. This is cool. We're every stereotype that's ever existed.
We screwed up the big move, but we did everything else good enough that it was okay.
Yeah. And now two hot, sexy people get together, roll credit. Oh, we could all feel better about ourselves.
But yeah, I just like that. It's like, they didn't overcome or achieve like what they didn't get like an unbelievable achievement. They just kind of did something mediocre, and it's not that they won. It was the journey to get there of self-improvement. It's not the winning that counted. So, it's a bittersweet victory.
Yeah, no one's like really like there's no like life is great at the end. We've now beat mental illness. It's like, no, we're still going to live in the world of mental illness, but we're going to not face it alone.
and we're going to be at least more prepared for failure.
Yeah. Because dad's only one bet away from losing the restaurant. And, you know, I'm going to be working at the restaurant. And if I encounter difficult customers, someone might take a chair to the head. You know, it's like, I don't know. We don't know where this goes. She might start screwing everyone that works at the restaurant because they're not getting along. And we don't know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, so this is very different in the book. In the book, they nailed the dance routine, and then like the twist is that it was called like a dance depression away, and it wasn't a competition; it was an exhibition. So there never was any winners, and that was just kind of a thing she never told him.
Yeah, I like this better.
Yeah, this is better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things about the movie that's better.
I love this like 5.0, and they're just like tearing the house down. Everyone's looking around like, are these people nuts? It's like, oh, yeah, actually, yes, they are.
Yeah.
So.
We get shots of like everyone's house, and we get a voiceover from Pat. Then we cut to it's game day, and everyone's hanging out. Pat Senior's restaurant is going to happen. And basically, it's a happy ending for these characters.
Yeah, it's as happy an ending as you can get, and it's also like believable. And we're gonna have homemades and Krabby Patties.
Yeah.
And and neither one of them are wearing their wedding rings at the end. They like go out of the way to show their hands like twice. I noticed that. It's like, okay, they're not living in the past anymore.
And at the dance competition, Danny showed up and he had a girlfriend and his parents were there, and like things seemed to be going well for him for the moment. So.
Yeah. I mean, he's an X-ray technician, you know.
Yeah.
And he's cool. He'll be fine. Just keep away from the painkillers or whatever he was doing. Yeah, he'll be fine.
So Nathan, did you like this movie, or your expectations?
I actually did.
For this movie.
Yeah, I like this movie, but then again, I was also watching it waiting for the what do you call it? The twist. It's like because they're setting it up like there's going to be a twist, and there wasn't a twist. And I don't know if they did that on purpose or not, but it made it funny in a way because I kept like waiting for, like in the end, it's like it's just going to be Pat like in a hotel room. And it's but he's also got Tiffany's dress, and it's like, oh, she was never real, and he was just pretending to be Tiffany, and we're gonna see flashbacks where he's pretending to be Tiffany, and everyone knows he's nuts, so they're just like, just play along with it, he's nuts. And then all the credit card buildings are falling in the background. It's like, okay, it didn't happen, but
Well, the last movie we watched, what was the last movie we watched? Atomic Blonde.
Yeah.
Pat McAvoy, and you were talking about that movie Filth, so I went and watched that movie Filth.
Oh yeah, that's a great movie. It's a very like Scottish, like UK movie, but it's cool.
And not a great depiction of mental.
No.
But I was like, oh wait, like these two guys in Atomic Blonde were both in Filth, but like. Yeah, I guess if you had Filth on the mind, you're applying that to this movie. It's like, oh yeah, this movie takes a turn for the better.
Yeah.
But yeah, also the ending. I can't remember how the ending's very different in the book and worse.
Yeah.
Because like I said, Danny doesn't show up constantly, so he shows up at the end because here at some point Pat learns that. Nikki wasn't writing back, and that it was just Tiffany, and so he goes into an episode, and but he doesn't hurt anybody. He just runs off, and he runs so far he ends up in North Philly, and then somebody beats him up and like takes his shoes and things like that, which has weird racial complications about that. Huh. And then because he's in North Philly, like Danny shows up and takes him in, and then they take him to the hospital, and he has like a broken arm and leg. And then basically he like forgives Tiffany, and they kind of have like at the happiest ending they can have. So
yeah,
but yeah. Yeah, they skip all that stuff in the movie here, and it's pretty much it's a lot of the performance carry the way, but like yeah, I'd say this is the movie's better than the book.
Yeah, and this is like a balanced movie in a lot of ways. It's
Yeah,
like it is full throttle in certain directions, but it also kind of works itself out. Like it's not so out of shape at the end. You're like, oh, this is nonsense. I don't believe any of this. It's like, no, I do believe this, and I want to believe it because it's fun. Because I'm taking this for what it is. It's not like it's like the ultimate happy ending. But it's it's the best you can hope for. It was always kind of there. What I liked about this movie is it wasn't like, oh, this took a really weird turn, like not the weird turn I was thinking, not the unreliable narrator turn, but it's like, oh, it took a weird turn and everyone ended up happily ever after, and it was truly the silver lining that like, oh, he was hoping for. It's like, no, nothing of the sort happened. It's just he ended up like, oh, what was right in front of him all along was what was going to make him happy.
yeah.
And he also wanted this. He didn't come to realize this. I mean, if you believe him and his letter, it's like I knew from the first time I met you that like this whole thing with my ex-wife and all that, I always knew that was fake, but I had to maintain that in my mind for some reason because I was working through shit. But now I'm here to love you regardless of how dark and sinister your past is or what you seem like. It's like we're the best thing for each other in this crazy old world we live in.
We have a Hail Mary probe that we're sending into space containing a supercut of scenes from the imperfect collection that is the Verhoeven Effect. Nathan, what scene from Silver Linings Playbook are we chucking into space?
To make this movie make sense to an alien civilization, let's see, if we're going full three body problem here, I'd have to say probably when him and Cliff, or when he's talking to his shrink about Tiffany.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well, maybe she needs a friend. The doctor's always, it's like, well, she's not trying to manipulate you or involved in some plot against you. Maybe she needs a friend. Maybe she needs you to be kind. That's the only way I could explain this movie to outsiders that would make sense. The only scene I could think of that would make sense, because this movie's told in the context of mental illness, which means the absence of logic and rational thinking. So that would be mine.
Well, if you like what you heard, and how couldn't you? You can find us at verhoeveneffect.com. Uh, you can rate us on whatever podcast platform of your choice. You can rate us on whatever you want, but remember, the algorithm only listens to the highest rating. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. We also have listener support at verhoeveneffect.com, where you can support us a monthly stipend either 99 cents, 49 or 9.99. You can find us on Twitter or whatever it's called nowadays at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us at Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory and watch both this and that show live and unedited. And we also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye.